Chapter 1340. Invulnerable, huh? Lin Yu said nonchalantly. With his long sword, he directly approached the ruins. His left hand formed a seal with unparalleled power. This punch was enough to shatter the sun and stars. Even the void trembled. However, some royals who were familiar with Ruin sneered. He's stupid enough to get close to Ruin. Looks like this Lin Yu is just SOSO. Everyone sneered. However, Ming Qingtian continued to observe with a solemn expression. Boom! Ruin raised his fist to meet the attack. However, something unexpected happened. Amidst the terrifying shockwaves, Ruin's arm exploded from Lin Yu's punch. The broken bones and the special runes of the Ruin clan intertwined on them. They all shattered at the same time. How was this possible? Some of the royals sat up in shock. How is his body so powerful? Everyone was shocked. However, in the next moment, they all gasped. Lin Yu didn't give Ruin any chance and grabbed his other arm. He tore it off forcefully. At the same time, the origin fire quickly engraved the runes in Lin Yu's body. This was the Ruin clan's secret of invulnerability. While Lin Yu was killing Ruin, he was also engraving the runes. Lin Yu's blood aura circled around him and turned into a solid form. Only now did Lin Yu realize that the ancient god who had passed away back then was definitely not a simple person. After Lin Yu obtained the 3 moves of the ancient god, the enhancement of his body was already terrifying. Now that the 3 moves were used together, the supreme attack method of his body was displayed. Lin Yu's blood aura turned into the 4 spirits, all of which were added to his limbs. They turned into blood-colored patterns with an aura of immortality. He then stomped on Ruin's chest, causing it to cave in. Ruin roared. He didn't expect that this was just the beginning and he would be crushed to this extent. Lin Yu was too powerful. Among those in the same generation, he practically could not find an opponent already. Even the best members of the royal family were not enough in front of Lin Yu, even if he had truly mastered his innate divine arts. The 4 spirits formed by Lin Yu's blood qi directly imprisoned Su. A scene that made one's hair stand on end appeared. Lin Yu was breaking Su's bones one by one. After observing them for a while, he casually threw them to the side. He did not have the slightest scruple. Lin Yu knew that it would be impossible to completely wipe out the mysterious creatures in the royal city of the mysterious creatures. He wanted to humiliate Ruin, shatter his Tao heart. Lin Yu didn't feel the slightest bit of pity. When Ruin took out the banner that was refined from the souls of the universe's creatures, he no longer had any thoughts of holding back. Everyone present felt a chill run down their spines. Stop! At this time, some of the royal family members couldn't stand it anymore. This was a naked humiliation, a slap to the face of the strange creatures. How powerful was the royal family? They were immortal and had existed since ancient times. They would never allow themselves to be humiliated like this. At this time, the 3 royal family members all rushed up, wanting to kill Lin Yu. Finally can't stand it anymore. Lin Yu sneered. Facing the 3 royal family members who were no weaker than Jun Xie, Lin Yu was not the slightest bit moved. The space-time Tao law here directly imprisoned the 3 of them. It was as if they were in a swamp, unable to move. So, this is the royal family? Disappointing. Lin Yu stood up and looked at Ruin's skull under his feet. He said with disappointment. Boom! He raised his foot and stomped on Ruin's skull, shattering it into pieces. The burning soul fire was also extinguished by Lin Yu. The outstanding member of the royal family, Ruin, was killed by Lin Yu. Below, everyone kept quiet out of fear. Lin Yu's performance today was too strong. It had turned into a huge rock in the hearts of the strange creatures. Ming Qingtian also realized that if Lin Yu didn't suppress them today, it would cause an unimaginable impact. Although the strange creatures wouldn't really die under the influence of the revival substance, their invincible heart would be completely blinded by Lin Yu's continuous killing. The 3 royal family members came together to kill. So this is the strongest of the strange creatures? Lin Yu looked at the 3 royal family members who had broken through the confinement of the space-time Tao law. He was not moved, only wearing a faint smile. His eyes were full of disdain. Now that the royal family of the strange creatures had disregarded their reputation and joined forces to kill Linyu, some of the strange creatures' faces gradually turned ugly. 3 are not enough, Linyu said. He was like a god, walking in the world. Every step he took was accompanied by an unparalleled pressure. At this time, the 3 royal family members felt that they were invincible. The royal family members were proud. Kill him completely. Our royal family is invincible. Puff, puff, puff. However, the reality was cruel. Before the 3 royal family members could get close to Linyu, they were killed by Linyu. Now, Linyu was supported by the 12th level of the inner world. He was already standing in the forbidden area of the original god realm and was invincible. In addition, he was supported by many Tao laws. Endless stars pressed down on them. The 3 royal family members were crushed into powder. Then, the space-time Tao law turned into a guillotine and destroyed them. When Qinshin saw Linyu use the Star Tao law, he wasn't too surprised. This was because he knew that Linyu had the origin fire, which could inscribe Tao laws and record the truth of heaven and earth. The scene quieted down, leaving Linyu alone in the fighting ring. You come up and die. Linyu pointed at the royal family member who killed the little girl. His eyes were indifferent. Su and the others were still in the process of being resurrected. The royal family member looked serious and was about to go up to the fighting ring. However, he was stopped by Ming Qingtian. He looked at Linyu with indifference in his eyes and said, "I'll take you on." He wanted to use Linyu as a touchstone for the strange tribe. However, the current situation was obviously out of his control, although he could use Lord Song's methods to kill or humiliate Linyu. However, the strange tribe's belief of invincibility had begun to waver. If he didn't defeat Linyu in the same generation, the impact would be far-reaching. Ming Qingtian went up to the fighting ring. Kill that prisoner. Revered Ming is invincible. The strange tribe members below raised their arms and cheered. When they saw Ming Qingtian make a move, their confidence was greatly boosted. The previous battle had made them feel too depressed. Only people like Ming Qingtian could suppress Linyu. They could suppress his arrogance. When Linyu saw Ming Qingtian go up to the fighting ring, his eyes gradually became serious. From the previous battle, he already knew that Ming Qingtian was not an ordinary person. His strength was in the original god realm, and he was definitely in the forbidden area. However, at this moment, Monarch City shook. Clang! A grand bell rang, shaking the entire territory of the strange tribe. The bell rang from the ancestral land of the strange tribe. It's the sovereign stage. Those who heard the bell had to go to the ancestral land immediately to pay their respects. No one was an exception. Prisoner, you're lucky, someone said. However, they had to go to the ancestral land as soon as possible. Ming Qingtian sighed softly. He twisted his fingers, and black runes appeared on the shackles on Linyu's wrists. Soon, they covered his entire body, sealing his cultivation and all other means. Take him to the slave district, Ming Qingtian ordered. A person stepped forward and led Linyu and the group of creatures from the universe to the slave district. You're lucky today. Cherish your life, the person said to Linyu. The terrifying aura on Linyu was no longer there. He didn't answer and just followed behind. The young man beside him was holding the little girl's body like a walking corpse. The chain on his neck was pulled forward. Linyu looked at the young man and felt sad. Not long after, they arrived at the so-called slave district. This place was under an abyss. It was dark and there were no houses. It was very dilapidated and desolate. Corpses could be seen everywhere. These people were expressionless like walking corpses. No one knew when they would die. They weren't contaminated by the strange tribe and were still practicing the cultivation techniques of the universe. This was deliberately done by the strange tribe to study the cultivation techniques of the universe and find a way to restrain them. Most of the creatures in this abyss were the descendants of the utmost beings. They were very talented in cultivation and were used as sparring partners for the strange tribe. However, under the inhumane torture of the strange tribe, the people here had long forgotten to resist and endured the slavery. Chapter 1341. Stay here obediently. In a few days, it will be your time." The man smiled cruelly and kicked the young man away. Just as he was about to leave, Lin Yu took a step forward. Although his Tao and cultivation had been sealed, the toughness of his battle body was still there. This man was only at the early original God realm. How could he withstand Lin Yu's attack? He was killed by Lin Yu directly. Warm blood splashed on the young man's face. This scene caused the gazes of everyone present to shift towards them. To them, the man was like a god. However, he was killed by Lin Yu so easily. Undoubtedly, this made their hearts tremble. He knew that the man would be resurrected under that substance. However, this was not something Lin Yu was concerned about. At least, the man would bear the pain of death. Lin Yu did not care about anything else. He sat cross-legged on a gray stone. Before he closed his eyes, he looked peaceful and peaceful. In the abyss, there was no distinction between day and night. No one knew how long had passed. Lin Yu felt that someone was moving in front of him. When he opened his eyes, it was the young man. Too much time had passed. They had even forgotten the language of the universe. However, Lin Yu could feel the meaning from the fluctuation of his spirit consciousness. He was expressing his gratitude to Lin Yu. Lin Yu nodded. This was what Lin Yu wanted to see. Since these people knew how to express their feelings, it proved that they still had a trace of rationality as living beings in their hearts. Perhaps it was because of the supreme bloodline flowing in their bodies that they did not lose themselves after such a long time. However, they lived a miserable life. Since the day they were born, they lived in the abyss of suffering and could die at any time. Because of this, they were so numb. It was as if they were used to death. Lin Yu hated the strange creatures more and more. Back then, when the supreme bloodline passed away, they did not even let go of it and kept it in captivity in the abyss. You are all of the most supreme bloodlines, and your ancestors have endless glory. You shouldn't be like this. During this period of time, Lin Yu had used the Tao fruit of the future to remove all the traps left behind by the Azure Emperor, as well as the seal on his wrist. Now, his words contained the sound of the Tao, which woke everyone up. At this time, an old man who was lying on the ground with broken limbs shook off the dirt on his body. His cloudy eyes were filled with tears. He was mumbling in a low voice. He hadn't completely grasped the language of the universe and could only vaguely roar out, "We are the descendants of the Supreme back then. How can we endure humiliation here?" The old man was in a miserable state. He was obviously in the Tao realm, but his flame of life was about to be extinguished. His 4 limbs had been corroded by the methods of the eerie race. Now, only his bones could be seen. There was also a kind of strange insect that drilled holes in the bones. He was a carrier used by the creepy clan to cultivate the paging bugs. His ending was very tragic. In these 10,000 years, he had been enduring heart-wrenching pain. However, because of the bloodline in his body, he didn't completely die. There was still a trace of life left. Now, he was awakened by Lin Yu's Tao voice. Tears continued to flow from his eyes. It wasn't because of the pain in his body, but because they had begun to forget where they came from. They had lost themselves in the Ming world. You are all of the most supreme bloodlines. I won't let you die like this. Lin Yu said slowly, "Restore the glory of our ancestors." He didn't know what happened to the creepy clan. 3 years passed. Lin Yu had completely removed the hidden dangers in his body. He also realized that there seemed to be a method left behind by his first ancestor in the royal city. It was very secretive. It wasn't until Lin Yu used the King of God's order to heal the injuries of these living beings that there was a commotion. At this time, the old man had also recovered. Their realms were very high. Under Lin Yu's guidance, they quickly grasped the language of the universe. However, there were many people who were still numb. This wasn't something that could be changed in a short time. They had been tortured inhumanly since they were young. Their souls had died, and they had become walking corpses. Lin Yu already had his own thoughts. What Gu Cheng had done had made him bitterly disappointed. After he left the Ming world, he would find some people to settle the score. One could see that the strange matter above the abyss had become incomparably dense. It had an aura that made one's heart palpitate. The entire royal city was very quiet. The creepy clan was still outside the ancestral land. A grand eulogy resounded throughout the royal city. Lin Yu had already arrived in the royal city. Now, he had already comprehended a small part of Su's invulnerability. The innate divine ability of the royal clan was passed down in the bloodline. It was unimaginably mysterious. Even if Lin Yu used the power of the ancient word and was in the Tao comprehension realm of the Great Void 8 divisions, he only had a preliminary understanding of it in 10 years. If he wanted to unleash its full power, he would still need a long time to comprehend it. Could it be that something has happened to the creepy clan's ancestral land? Lin Yu stood on the tallest building in the royal city and looked into the distance. The creepy clan's ancestral land was emitting endless ashes. The aura that was very terrifying. Even if Lin Yu was looking from afar, if he did not have the protection of the clay jar, his body and soul would be destroyed, or he would be affected by the creepy clan's aura and be trapped in the darkness. After observing for a while, Lin Yu explored some places in the royal city. There were some treasures of the universe, including lost copies. He could see that the creepy clan's ancestral land had flames shooting into the sky. The creepy clan seemed to be burning something. What were they worshipping? Lin Yu was puzzled. Looking at this scene, he thought of the altar he saw on Mars that year. It seemed to have the same evil power. In the blink of an eye, it had been dozens of years since Lin Yu came to the Ming world. After seeing the creepy clan's techniques, he also had his own understanding of breaking through to the Tao realm. He was only one step away from the original God realm, which was to control the heavenly Tao. Now that he had comprehended it, he needed a quiet environment to completely take that step. He was constantly comprehending the Tao laws engraved in the origin fire. Is he here? Above the abyss, Lin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, a supreme aura erupted from his body. Outside the creepy clan's ancestral land, the Tao of time and space suddenly appeared. A hazy and handsome figure appeared. His body had an aura that looked down on the world. The Tao of time and space surrounded him as if he was no longer in time. He took a step forward and came in front of Lin Yu. Could First Ancestor have foreseen that I would come to the Ming world? Lin Yu muttered. The figure merged with Lin Yu, causing him to become hazy. The majestic chanting of scriptures sounded. This was the resonance of Lin Yu's 3 lives Tao fruit. The creepy clan's ancestral land had already sensed Lin Yu. This was to be expected. Lin Yu's aura erupted. The moment First Ancestor's aura and the 3 lives Tao fruit merged with his body, the entire capital trembled. King Tsong and King Yu felt this aura and woke up from the sacrificial ceremony. However, the sacrificial ceremony was at a critical stage and could not be disturbed. It's Lin Xian. No, there are also a few unfamiliar auras. King Tsong was shocked. They did not dare to imagine that there were still supreme beings in the world who dared to come to the Ming world's capital city. Lin Yu kept the living beings in the abyss into his inner world. At this moment, he was the supreme being. The creepy matter in the capital city was fading. The gray resuscitating matter was completely annihilated under Lin Yu's Tao laws. Lin Yu was now standing at the peak of heaven and earth. The heavens were trembling together. Even though the capital city was protected by terrifying Tao laws, it was now collapsing inch by inch, becoming a land of despair. Today, I will kill a few sovereigns and cause the entire creepy territory to collapse. Lin Yu's body carried a sharp aura. This was a special moment. Lin Xian seemed to have foreseen it. Now that the creepy clan's sacrificial ceremony was at a special stage, it was the most taboo time to disturb them. Lin Yu had merged with Lin Xian's aura, so he knew about it now. His figure appeared directly in the creepy clan's ancestral land. Lin Xian. King Tsong knelt in front of him and said in shock. Only a powerhouse like Lin Xian could make him change his expression. His body was surrounded by a strange red substance, which was rapidly healing his injuries. In front of him was a majestic sacrificial altar. It was dark as if this was the end of the world. Nothing existed, only endless creepiness. No, I am Lin Yu. Lin Yu's figure was blurry, as if he no longer belonged to history. He was now standing outside the river of history. Chapter 1342. The piercingly cold aura caused the entire ancestral land to tremble. As Lin Yu pointed his finger, the altar built by the creepy tribe shattered and turned into dust. Countless members of the creepy tribe were turned into dust because of this. Their origin was shattered, and their names were no longer recorded in history. Now that Lin Yu had mastered the supreme power, many people here no longer had the ability to be resurrected. King Yu and Song Emperor had no more scruples at this time. They immediately broke free from the black chains of order and used their power to protect this place. Otherwise, who knew how many members of the creepy tribe would die because of this? This attack only destroyed the altar. The creepy ancestral land that had existed since time immemorial was not affected at all. Lin Yu was like the only emperor in this world. His clothes fluttered in the wind, and his body was surrounded by the laws of order. He stood in the sky, and no one could stop him. Even King Yu and King Song, who had recovered their strength, could not resist this terrifying suppression. Cold sweat had already formed on their foreheads. "You are very bold." King Song looked coldly at Lin Yu in the sky. However, he did not get a reply from Lin Yu. The stone sword appeared in Lin Yu's hand. With a slash of the sword, it was powerful enough to pierce through the universe. Countless stars fell from the sky and created huge craters on the ground. This energy fluctuation even affected the ancestral land. The entire ancient city was shaking. At this time, some old monsters appeared. They wanted to see what was happening with the help of the heaven refining flask. It's in the direction of the creepy tribe's territory. What happened there? The old ancestor of the Azure Universe Pavilion frowned. It had only been 100 years. Did the creepy tribe make a move again? Many people guessed. Their expressions were extremely solemn. If there was still a sovereign among the creepy tribe, it would be a disaster for the ancient city. Even if the first emperor revived, it would be difficult for him to resist. Could it be related to Lin Yu? Someone asked doubtfully. This was because the shaking of heaven and earth was obviously related to the laws of order. There seemed to be a sense of familiarity. Outside the ancestral land, King Yu and King Song had both made their moves. The thrones in the ancestral land had yet to fully awaken. Only the two of them had the power to fight Lin Yu. The surviving members of the strange tribe all had fearful looks on their faces. They did not expect that in the future, someone would dare to cause trouble in the ancestral land of the strange creatures. Since ancient times, such incidents could be counted on one hand. The only few times this had happened were during the battles in the ancient history. Back then, the utmost beings had killed their way into this place. However, they had all paid a terrible price, eventually losing their lives. However, King Song and King Yu's complexion were not looking too good right now. Now, the power Lin Yu wielded had almost surpassed theirs. He was surrounded by several supreme Tao laws. The long river of time appeared vaguely. Today, we will slay a sovereign and spread the fame of our 12 universes. Lin Yu's voice was like a great bell, terrifying beyond compare. Just the sound of it caused a large number of stars to explode and shatter. The royal city was destroyed and turned into ruins. It really is Lin Yu. In the ancient city, an old monster used all his power to strengthen the heaven refining flask. That terrifying roar spread throughout the origin ground. Even the living beings in the ancient city heard it clearly. It really is Taoist Lin. He is displaying his power and killing the strange creatures in the territory of the strange creatures. Bao Jiaming was trembling with excitement. He almost shouted out loud. In the memories of the others, Lin Yu was already dead. Now, they did not know what was going on. However, they were also very excited at this moment. Killing the strange creatures outside the ancestral land of the strange creatures. This was something that had never happened since ancient times. Since ancient times, no one had killed their way into the strange creatures' ancestral land alone. Even the utmost beings back then did not do it. Today, I will crush your bones and scatter your ashes. You will ruin the plans of the Ming realm. King Song's eyes were cold. He looked at Lin Yu with a murderous look in his eyes. This ritual was a once-in-a-lifetime event. It was very likely that the strength of the strange creatures would rise to another level. But now it was ruined by Lin Yu. This seemed to be something that Lin Xian had predicted. The special time point was awakened and merged with his bloodline, reproducing the supreme power of the past. Today, I will kill you. Lin Yu only said one sentence. Then, he took a step forward. It was as if he had traveled back in time to kill King Song. The stars in the sky were falling. Lin Yu did not waste any time. This was a special time point. Lin Yu could not maintain the power in his body for a long time. He needed to end the battle as soon as possible. King Song, who was wearing a battle armor, roared. A halberd appeared in his hand. There were runes intertwining on it, drawing on the power of the ancestral land to strengthen his body. He felt a huge pressure. Back then, Lin Xian had left a huge shadow in their hearts. King Yu also attacked at the same time. They were invincible since ancient times. But now, facing Lin Yu, who had merged with many types of energy, they were still not confident. They could recover from the ancestral land. But as sovereigns, their power was unimaginable. It would take a long time for them to recover. It was even more likely that they would die under Lin Xian's unparalleled means. How dare a dead person appear in this world again? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. You should rest in peace, King Yu said. A palm leaf fan appeared in his hand, and there were dark golden patterns on it. As his energy exploded, the ancestral land shook. There was a gray substance in it that strengthened his body. The two were forcefully recovering to their peak state. Everything happened in an instant. The King of God's badge and a ruler appeared above Lin Yu's head. It went straight for King Yu, who had spoken. As for himself, he held the stone sword in his hand and attacked King Song. This state could not be maintained for long. Sovereigns had lived for countless years and were strengthened by the ancestral land. It was even harder to kill them. Lin Yu had to try his best to kill at least one sovereign magnate. Now, he had the strength to do so. An unparalleled energy was gathering. With a raise of his hand, he used his strongest killing move. The fragments of the river of time surrounded the stone sword. King Song felt that his body was about to be torn apart. But under the way of karma, the world outside the ancestral land had undergone a huge change. It was as if everything here had turned into threads of karma that entangled King Song. He could not move. Puff, it was just a single blow. Lin Yu broke through King Song's armor. His chest was cut open. Strange gray blood flowed and dripped onto the ground. Soon, it was evaporated by the threads of karma. King Song was invincible since ancient times. How could he be stained with blood? The strange royal family members were in disbelief. To them, King Song and the others were the faith of the strange race. Standing there, they were synonymous with invincibility. But now, under Lin Yu's attack, they were stained with blood. Chapter 1343. Everyone found it hard to believe, but the truth was right in front of them. Lin Yu was too powerful. He was invincible in the Ming world. Even with the support of the ancestral land, King Song and King Yu were still no match for him. They were constantly retreating with blood flowing out from the corner of their mouths. Even King Song's head was almost chopped off by Lin Yu. The laws of time and space were gathering crazily. All of the strange creatures were trembling in fear. Even with the protection of the ancestral land, there were still some weak ones who died completely. Even the ancestral land couldn't revive them. Lin Yu was suppressing King Song. They were fighting from the sky to the ground. Lin Yu's artifacts resonated and forced King Song to retreat. He was already covered in blood. I have never met a worthy opponent in history. I didn't expect to be suppressed by you in the future. King Song's face was cold. But from another perspective, he had to admit that Lin Yu's strength had reached an unimaginable level. Lin Yu knew that with his current strength, he could only try to kill an unparalleled king. Therefore, he didn't say much and focused on killing King Song. But King Song wasn't someone who would let others kill him. At this moment, the halberd in his hand emitted a bright black light. The original stars of the Ming world were sucked into his hand and smashed towards Lin Yu. When the stars reached 100 feet around Lin Yu, they were all destroyed by the threads of karma. Then, Lin Yu's body moved forward again. His stone sword was unparalleled. King Song's pride prevented him from taking a step back. But because of this, he was severely injured. It was almost a Tao injury that couldn't be healed in a short time. The battle lasted for a long time. But at this moment, the ancestral land of the strange creatures was shaking. It seemed like something unknown was awakening. Even Lin Yu's aura was affected. It wasn't as strong as before. Lin Yu's eyes were deep as he looked straight into the ancestral land. Countless black hands appeared. Each of them was as large as the firmament and could easily destroy a great world. Lin Yu's Tao laws were being suppressed. The threads of karma kept retreating, returning to Lin Yu's body. He could no longer suppress King Yu and King Song. The ancestral land of the bizarre race was hard to imagine. There were many secrets hidden within. Otherwise, Lin Xian and the others would not have met with such a calamity. After entering the strange ancestral land and coming out, he died not long after. Now, another change had occurred in the strange ancestral land. This made Lin Yu frown slightly. This was because Lin Xian had already deduced this node before the ancient history. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be any problems. However, at that moment, the strange race's ancestral land was undergoing an abnormal change. Lin Yu knew that it was impossible to kill King Song today. King Song and King Yu had also sealed off Lin Yu's escape route, making it difficult for him to escape. I admit that you are amazing. If you didn't come to the Ming world, given time, you might be able to reach the level of your ancestor. Under the illumination of the ancestral land, King Song's injuries were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The Tao wounds that Lin Yu had left on his body also disappeared. They were healed by the strange changes in the ancestral land. Although Lin Yu was being suppressed, the aura on his body was still incomparably powerful. What a pity, Lin Yu only said. If he wanted to kill the Song Emperor now, the chances of success would be next to none. The most important thing now was whether he could retreat safely. Because under the influence of the strange ancestral land's aura, Lin Yu realized that the power of the Tao fruit and the shadow of his ancestor was gradually fading. King Song and King Yu had used the power of the ancestral land to form a huge formation, trying to trap Lin Yu within. In front of the ancestral grounds, no matter how powerful you are, you won't be able to do anything. Don't tell me you still don't understand why so many Supremes of the past were killed. The strength of the ancestral grounds isn't something you can imagine. The Azure Emperor laughed. His complexion looked very pale, but he didn't seem to be worried at all. Under the intertwining of the strange runes, there was a sense of supremacy, especially under the strange ancestral land. The aura of a sovereign on his body was incomparably intense. It was even showing signs of suppressing Lin Yu. Facing this change, Lin Yu knew that it would be difficult for him to escape today. Why not fight to his heart's content? Even if he died, he would drag his sovereign down with him. The aura of Lin Yu's body exploded. He was using all of his power, and at this moment, he was able to temporarily isolate the aura of the strange ancestral land. At this moment, Lin Yu's body became blurry, as if he had turned into a carrier of Tao. Endless power. Even under the strange black gas, he still exploded with his own light. The biting cold aura swept across the ancestral land. Now, even Gu Cheng could feel the great horror of the Ming world. The aura of the strange tribe's ancestral land has exploded. Lin Yu is in danger. The old monster and the others who were using the heaven refining gourd to detect the aura of the Ming world were all retreating. In the depths of their spirit consciousness, black gas appeared. This was just sensing the change of the strange ancestral land, but it caused a huge problem for them. Their spirit consciousness was polluted. The old ancestor of the Azure Universe Pavilion was sitting on the ground, and the heaven refining gourd was rotating slowly above his head. He was using his own Tao to remove the big problem in his spirit consciousness. Not only him, but the old ancestor of the Wang family and the others also had a serious expression. Wisps of black gas were being expelled from the top of their heads. Everyone was incomparably shocked. Now, the few half-step sovereigns were just watching from a distance, and this was the result. Just how terrifying was the strange ancestral land? As for what Lin Yu, who was outside of the ancestral land, was enduring, the upper echelons of Gu Cheng did not dare to imagine. In front of the strange ancestral land, Lin Yu was still suppressing King Song and King Yu. It was just that he was gradually showing signs of weakness. His invincibility was still there. He had heavily injured the two sovereigns multiple times. But now, the endless black gas of the ancestral land had appeared. There was some kind of evil in it, and it was constantly eroding Lin Yu. It caused the power in his body to weaken continuously. If things went on like this, Lin Yu might fail and die for real. But now, the area outside of the ancestral land had been sealed. Even though Lin Yu was standing at the top of the living beings, it was still difficult for him to break free and completely break through this place. He was in a very dangerous situation. If this continued, he would most likely die here. Stop your pointless struggle. King Song's body had almost merged with the black gas. Now that the ancestral land has begun to recover, the time for the Battle of the Cage is nearing. King Yu said, the recovery of the ancestral land had obviously exceeded their expectations. Under their joint deduction, they estimated that the ancestral land would need at least tens of thousands of years to recover. But now, for some unknown reason, it had recovered prematurely. This was undoubtedly good news for the strange race. The war that had lasted for countless eras was finally coming to an end. The strange race had always wanted to get something from the universe. Now, they finally saw hope. Soon, the strange race would be able to start their conquest of the universe. And now, Gu Cheng did not have any powerful beings to protect it. It was no longer a concern. Chapter 1344. Since you're so stubborn, then you can accompany your ancestor here, King Yu said slowly. His tone was filled with endless coldness. He had already declared Lin Yu's death. Like a decree, it was branded into the black mist. This was the strength of the strange tribe. They could use the ancestral land to emit invincible power. Even the Supremes would find it hard to resist. King Yu and Song Emperor worked together. The endless black mist surged and suppressed Lin Yu. Lin Yu was stuck in a quagmire, unable to break free. In front of the ancestral land, everything seemed so powerless. Am I really going to die here today? Lin Yu was not moved by the threat of death. In front of the ancestral land, even the God King's token had lost its effect. It was difficult to use the space-time reversal. But at this moment, Lin Yu was still attacking. While resisting the erosion of the ancestral land, he rushed toward Song Emperor, who had almost merged with the black mist. He was gathering his strongest attack. He imprisoned Song Emperor, ignoring the erosion of the ancestral land's energy. He wanted to kill Song Emperor before he left. This was a bold move. 100-fold superposition appeared on Lin Yu's body. With a sweep of the sword, heaven and earth were destroyed. With the power of heaven and earth, the endless black mist was swept away. Song Emperor's true body was revealed. Puff! In an instant, the place seemed to have returned to its original state of chaos. Song Emperor's expression changed. Since he ascended to the throne, this was the first time he felt the threat of death. King Yu, do it! Song Emperor called out to King Yu. But it was too late now. The two of them did not expect that Lin Yu could still explode with such power. Song Emperor's body was directly destroyed by Lin Yu. Under the endless Tao law, this place became unknown. The black mist rushed toward Lin Yu crazily. At this moment, Lin Yu could not care about anything else. He was ready to use the clay jar to kill that Song Emperor. Lin Yu sighed inwardly. If the jar was complete, perhaps even the ancestral land wouldn't be able to stop me today. Although he already had more than half of the jars under his control, they were not complete. It would be difficult for him to fight against the truly bizarre ancestral land. Endless black fog surged towards Lin Yu. After using space-time overlay, Lin Yu's body started to crack. He used karma threads to forcefully stabilize his body. Now that Di Song had been killed by him, he could still revive under the influence of the black mist. Lin Yu wanted to completely erase the Azure Emperor from the depths of his origin. The strange ancestral land is shaking. The magnates on the throne needed countless years to nurture such a person. It seemed that the throne would not allow such a thing to happen. Strange phenomena appeared in the world. Red thunderbolts as large as mountains descended continuously. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth. Lin Yu's body was completely shrouded by the black fog, and the endless black fog was also surging, making everything unknown. Lin Yu was now a creature that had transcended history. His true form no longer belonged to this world. However, under the red thunderbolts, there was still nowhere to hide. He was struck by the thunderbolts. However, this obviously did not cause any substantial damage to Lin Yu. Suddenly, a different aura appeared in the endless black fog. "You can't die like this." At this moment, an old voice sounded in Lin Yu's ears. A strange force directly took Lin Yu away from this place. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. All that was left was a dissipating shadow. King Yu arrived at this place. Lin Yu's shadow was now pressed down by the strange black substance. Chi! In an instant, the shadow was smashed into dust. After an unknown amount of time, the aura here gradually calmed down. The strange creatures all thought that Lin Yu had died in the hands of the Song Emperor. They could not help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. Only King Yu frowned. He knew that Lin Yu was not killed. Instead, he was taken away by an unknown force. He closed his eyes and tried to deduce, but he did not get any results. He used the power of the ancestral land to reform the Song Emperor's body. After a few hours, the Song Emperor's face was extremely pale as he returned to the present world. However, his aura was very weak. His origin had been greatly damaged. He had to hibernate here and use the aura of the ancestral land to nourish himself for a period of time. That person, has he been killed? The Song Emperor looked at the scene with lingering fear. Lin Yu's attack just now was too terrifying. Under the combination of the Tao of Karma and the Tao of Space and Time, it could almost kill a creature from the deepest level of its origin. If it weren't for the fact that they were in the ancestral land, the Song Emperor had no confidence that he could survive such an attack. This time, the ritual was interrupted. The Song Emperor and King Yu entered the depths of the ancestral land. This time, Lin Yu's powerful attack had left them with lingering fear. Back then, the utmost being had left behind many tricks, so they had to be careful. Now that the Song Emperor needed to rest for a long time, some of their plans would be delayed. However, the good thing was that the ancestral land had been awakened in advance for some unknown reason. This also allowed the other sovereigns to come out in advance. At that time, no one would be able to stop the strange creatures. In an unknown place, the terrifying aura and Tao of Karma on Lin Yu's body had faded away. Now, there was only a sense of weakness. Lin Yu looked at the injuries on his body. They were all healed. From his senses, Lin Yu knew that he was still in the bright world. However, with the fragrance of flowers and birds, it was like a paradise. It was very different from the strange creatures outside the ancestral land. "Senior, thank you for saving me." Lin Yu clasped his hands. In front of him was a white-haired old man in white robes. His hands were behind his back. However, one could see that there was a strange aura on his body. It blended with his Tao of Karma, becoming indistinguishable. The primordial flame in Lin Yu's body had been dormant since it sensed danger. During the battle, just now, it did not make a move. Now that it sensed the old man's aura, it hid even deeper. Its consciousness was hesitating. Looking at the old man in front of him, it felt familiar yet unfamiliar. However, one thing was for sure. The aura on the old man was a great threat to the primordial flame. The old man turned his head around. One side of his pupils was incomparably deep, like the stars in the universe. The other side was as black as ink, like a black hole that could devour everything. It revealed endless evilness. Lin Yu had already guessed the identity of this person, the utmost being who had mastered the Tao of stars, the utmost being who had betrayed the universe and carried the infamy of countless years. Right now, Lin Yu did not know the reason why the utmost being of the star realm had saved him. Lin Xian's bloodline. The utmost being of stars looked at Lin Yu. He let out a long sigh. His one clear eye revealed a hint of reminiscence. That's right. Lin Yu nodded. There was something wrong with the utmost being of Star's current state. It was as if he had completely come into contact with darkness, so much so that there were two auras circulating on his body at the same time. One was the Tao of stars, and the other was a strange substance. Moreover, his arms were covered with black runes, which looked extremely ferocious. However, that supreme pressure made the current Lin Yu feel immense pressure. The current utmost being of stars was definitely stronger than King Song and King Yu. He had mastered the power of two worlds at the same time. It was because of this that the descendants of the utmost being of stars could become truly strange living beings. This kind of concept was deeply engraved in the origin and would never fade away. Chapter 1345. You have already seen my current state, right? The star supremacy side. Senior, what happened? Lin Yu was certain that the star supremacy did not have any ill intentions towards him. For him to take the risk to save him before the strange ancestral ground, there must be some hidden reason behind it. I have already been tainted by the darkness. Perhaps in the near future, I will be completely lost and fall into the true throne of the strange races. The star supremacy said slowly. This was an irreversible fact. After the battle in ancient history, the star supremacy had joined the darkness and became a traitor, enduring the infamy of countless years. However, from what Lin Yu could tell, there must be some hidden reason behind it. Perhaps it was the result of a discussion between the supremacies, or perhaps the star supremacy had his own plans. However, the following words of the star supremacy told Lin Yu the reason why he had come to the Ming world. Back then, your ancestors, namely Lin Xian and a few others, knew that the defeat of the universe was inevitable and irreversible. However, from the ancestral ground, they managed to decipher some things. There is still hope for the future, the star supremacy explained. Is this the reason why you are hiding in the Ming world? Lin Yu asked. If that was the case, the star supremacy's boldness was enough to make all living beings respect him. Enduring the infamy of the ancient times and joining the darkness, until today, his bloodline and descendants had completely turned into the strange royalty. It was truly tragic. That's not all. There is another reason why I joined the strange race. I was entrusted by someone. The star supremacy sat cross-legged on the ground and looked at Lin Yu. Is it because of my first ancestor? Lin Yu guessed. That's right. The star supremacy replied. Lin Xian's cultivation base and realm in the past were already exceedingly high. He was almost invincible in this world. Perhaps only the strange ancestral ground could restrain him. He had grasped the laws of time and space at the same time. He must have predicted something long ago. Back then, did first ancestor foresee that I would come to the Ming world? Lin Yu frowned. Although he had guessed it long ago, he was still surprised to receive confirmation from the star supremacy. Back then, the river of time had been forcefully severed and refined. Even the utmost beings would find it hard to tamper with the river of time. Yet his first ancestor was able to foresee the happenings of the current world through the flow of time. Senior, may I ask what happened to the later generations? Lin Yu couldn't help but ask. This was a matter of great importance, and he wanted to understand it. That was because his first ancestor had already foreseen the present world, so he had probably seen and heard about the future. The only reason he was inquiring about the star supremacy was to confirm what he had seen from the Tao fruit of the future. He wanted an accurate result. This was because the future he saw from the future Tao fruit was simply too despairing. The universe was annihilated, and all living beings were gone. His eyes were filled with devastation. Even his own body had suffered a great problem. Between the heavens, he was the only one left. Lin Yu looked towards the star supremacy. However, after sighing, the star supremacy replied slowly. Back then, there was an utmost being who deduced together with Lin Xian. However, they didn't manage to get any results. They merely said that there would be variables in the future. Even with their current cultivation states, it would be hard for them to find out. However, we have two guesses about this. There might be a powerful being in the later generations who managed to break through the final step, or the ancestral ground might have completely awakened and devoured all living beings in the world. These two possibilities would lead to variables in the later generations that are unknown. The star supremacy explained to Linyu. However, the scenes that Linyu had seen from the later generations were closer to the second possibility. This had him frowning deeply. However, he snapped back to his senses quickly. Right now, he had already fused all three of his bodies into the current world. Once he fused all three of his bodies into one, he would no longer belong to this part of history. Everything in the future could change. The star supremacy looked at Linyu as well. His eyes were filled with endless disappointment. Right now, he had already sunk deep into the darkness. If Linyu had arrived just a little later, he might have lost himself completely and become the overlord of the bizarre throne. He might have become the strongest reckoner of the universe. Such an outcome would be extremely terrifying. That was because the star supremacy had already fused the power of the great Tao and the bizarre substances. He had already surpassed the boundaries of a living being. All he had to do now was complete his final metamorphosis. There was probably no one in this world who could restrain him. The premature awakening of the ancestral ground might have something to do with your arrival. The star supremacy said. Right now, he was the bizarre throne. However, he was only in hibernation. King Tsang and King Yu understood that the star supremacy was still in a deep slumber. He was still in the midst of metamorphosis and had yet to awaken. Linyu was puzzled by this. How terrifying was the ancestral ground? Back then, even his first ancestor and a few other powerful supremacies had joined forces to kill their way into this place. In the end, all of them ended up in a bloodbath. What Linyu had borrowed earlier on was still Lin Xian's aura and the power of his Tao fruit. His true strength was only at the supremacy level. Perhaps even the strength of his first ancestor wasn't as strong as it was back then. By right, it shouldn't be a threat to the ancestral ground. Could it be that I have a special aura on me? Linyu guessed in his heart. The first thing that came to his mind was the clay jar. The clay jar was most likely an artifact that the supremacy had brought out of the ancestral ground at the cost of his life. Now that the clay jar was in the depths of his consciousness, there was no guarantee that the ancestral ground wouldn't be able to detect it. Have you entered that ancient city in the Realm Sea before? The star supremacy asked. Linyu pondered for a moment and nodded. Yes, I have. Back then, I followed the path opened by the founding emperor and entered the origin ground. No wonder, no wonder, the star supremacy muttered. Could this ancient city be related to this bizarre ancestral ground? Linyu couldn't help but ask. The aura that it gave off was really stifling. Furthermore, he seemed to have seen old friends of the past, the great solar boundless Buddha and the darkness god official. This had always been a worry in Linyu's heart. Now that he heard the star supremacy mention it, he couldn't help but feel doubtful. Furthermore, the premature awakening of the ancestral ground had nothing to do with his damaged clay jar. Instead, it had something to do with the remnant aura of the stone city. Linyu thought about his Tao fruit in this lifetime. On his wrist, there was a string of prayer beads formed by the aura of the stone city. However, the prayer beads were way too mysterious. Linyu didn't tell the star supremacy about it. As though the star supremacy had already sensed it, he said, "Seems like you've already started walking towards that step." Towards the words of the star supremacy, Linyu was completely bewildered. What's the background of that stone city? Linyu couldn't help but ask the star supremacy. For an existence of this level to pay so much attention to it, that place wasn't as simple as Linyu had imagined it to be. The final land of reincarnation. The star supremacy merely replied indifferently. As the star supremacy said the name of that place, even the heavens and earth seemed to tremble. There was an immense amount of karma within that was being suppressed by the star supremacy's aura. Otherwise, Linyu had no doubts that this entire place would turn into a land of death. There's a rumor that Earth was once a mysterious place that many of us supremacies had built together. The star's supremacy shook his head and said, "However, this rumor isn't entirely correct. That's because Earth was brought out from there by us. Later on, we set up some means and placed it into the first universe." Hearing the star's supremacy talk about this anecdote, Lin Yu's heart couldn't help but tremble. Earth was known as the land of reincarnation. Within it, there were extremely strong living beings like the first emperor who were in the midst of reincarnation. Through the passage of time, they would awaken. This seemed to be similar to the ancestral ground of the mysterious beings. Both of them could revive living beings that had passed away. However, the effects of Earth were slightly weaker. Chapter 1346. Looking at the expression on Lin Yu's face, the utmost being of Star seemed to have understood the thoughts in his mind. He could not help but explain, "Are you thinking that the function of Earth seems to be the same as that of the mysterious ancestral ground?" Lin Yu nodded his head. Suddenly, he realized a serious problem. If that was the case, what was the difference between the living beings of the universe and the mysterious race? The mysterious race was indeed polluted, and the source of the pollution originated from the ancestral ground. The utmost being of Star had come into contact with darkness before. Therefore, he understood it well. There's a possibility. Perhaps the mysterious race and the living beings of the universe originated from the same source. Perhaps even the Ming world was once a pure land. The utmost being of Star voiced out his guess. However, there's another possibility. The mysterious race originated from an unknown world, and they were the ones who brought the ancestral ground down. No matter which theory it is, the vast and endless Ming world was indeed a living being of the universe back then. The utmost being of Star explained to Lin Yu. However, this involved too deep of a secret. Even the utmost being of Star did not have a complete understanding of the history of the universe. The mysterious race seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. It also seemed to have been imperceptibly influenced and evolved through the long history of ancient times. However, it was hard to trace back the birth of the mysterious race. However, the calamity that they had caused was unforgivable. Lin Yu understood a lot from the utmost being of Star. His heart was unable to calm down for a long time. "Since you're here, I promised Lin Xian that I'll give you a mysterious encounter." The utmost being of Star continued. Back then, that place was something that many utmost beings coveted. However, it was occupied by Lin Xian. Knowing that his days were numbered, he did not take control of it. The utmost being of Star continued. Lin Yu could not imagine what a mysterious encounter that could make even the utmost beings covet it was. However, it was fine as long as it could increase his strength. After all, the ancestral ground of the mysterious race had already started to recover. The time when the mysterious race would start their war would probably be much closer. Lin Yu's strength was way too weak right now. It was difficult for him to fully control his own Dao fruit as well. It was only by chance that he could fuse it with his own body. However, there were also hidden dangers. Lin Yu had already sensed that he would be affected if he used the fruits of his previous life or the future for a long time. It seemed that there would be problems with the compatibility between his divine will and his constitution. It was as if this body was gradually no longer his own. This was undoubtedly terrifying. There was no telling what would happen if his divine will and his constitution were separated. Would he still be himself then? It was already unknown. Therefore, in the future, if he could borrow less Dao fruits, he would not. Lin Yu thought about the creation his first ancestor had left for him, and his heart couldn't help feeling heavy. Back then, which expert who looked down on an entire era knew that he didn't have much time left and still wanted to leave the good fortune for himself? The black starlight around the body of the star, Paragon, rippled as he took Lin Yu with him and disappeared from this place. The star spun, and it was as if they had crossed into a greater world. Even Lin Yu's worlds in near at hand would not be able to match this speed. The environment here had changed greatly. The two of them were now in a narrow gap. On the right was a raging fire that even the great Tao of heaven and earth couldn't get close to. On the left was endless ice that could extinguish all life. The two substances were endless. In front of them, Lin Yu and the star paragon were as small as ants. This place was still in the Ming world, but there were no strange creatures. Even the strange substances had disappeared. This is the border of the Ming realm, which is the direction that is the furthest away from the universe. The aura of the star paragon was surging as he used the star Tao law to protect his body. The strange substances on his body were constantly being worn down. Right now, this place was very repulsive to the strange substances, far more so than to the living beings of the universe. This was also the reason why the strange creatures didn't exist here. They were very wary of the flames and ice. Even the star paragon's aura showed signs of weakening when he came here. If those truly bizarre creatures were to come here, perhaps even the sovereign stage would find it difficult to truly withstand them. This place has a natural restraining effect on the strange creatures. It's called a forbidden area by the strange creatures. The star paragon also had a sense of weakness. For the star paragon who was about to fall completely, this place had an extremely strong corrosive effect. This place contains a supreme power. If you can refine the source within, the benefits it will bring to your body will be immense. Furthermore, this place does not belong to the Ming realm or the origin ground. There are no Tao laws here. For the step you're taking, it will provide you with an extremely good environment. The star paragon had already seen through the path that Lin Yu had to take in order to break through the Tao induction realm. However, I have to remind you of something. Using yourself as the heavens will. This is a path that the few of us paragons had deduced in the past. While the benefits it will bring to your body are frightening, no one has ever verified if it will succeed. There are many dangers within. You're the first to step on this path. As for what dangers you will encounter, it is unknown. At this point, the face of the star paragon was solemn. Back then, when he turned himself into the heaven's will, this was a path that they had deduced as well. However, they had never verified it. This could be considered as stepping onto another path of cultivation. If Lin Yu were to succeed, his future path would not be shackled by the heaven and earth. He would become a true transcendent. Lin Yu nodded his head in response to the kind reminder of the star paragon. If Lin Yu wanted to step onto the path of the strongest, he would need to continuously break through and try. Now that he had a clear mind and had comprehended and settled for hundreds of years, he would naturally not give up so easily. The star paragon nodded his head. With a wave of his hand, the great Tao of stars appeared as though he was communicating with something here. In an instant, the space-time Tao law appeared and guided the two types of energy here. The source within was analyzed. Lin Yu sat cross-legged on the ground. Through his own Tao law, he triggered the aura left behind by the first ancestor and guided the source of fire and ice to this place. The moment Lin Yu came into contact with the fire and ice, cracks appeared on his body. The two supreme forces circled around him. Even if it was only a trace of the source, it was still unbearable. Almost instantly, Lin Yu's divine consciousness, battle physique, and even the source of his cultivation were eroded. The star paragon had already come to the outside world. He had already stepped into the darkness and could not stay here for long. He appeared in the outside world. However, he still looked at the scene inside. Universe fire, burial ice, is this the cremation ground of the past? The star paragon said slowly. He recalled the scene when he first came here. He had once entered the depths with a few other paragons and saw a terrifying scene. There were terrifying auras intertwining inside, making it difficult for them to enter. In the end, they could only return empty-handed. However, the universe fire and burial ice contained the most profound mysteries that could allow one to obtain great benefits. Before this, Lin Yu had left behind some means. Now, it would be much easier for Lin Yu to refine the source. Otherwise, how could a mere original God realm cultivator resist the fire and ice that could incinerate and bury the paragon, even if it was just a drop of the source? The yin and yang qi of the source appeared on Lin Yu's body. Under the double erosion of the fire and ice, Lin Yu was suffering great pain. However, his expression did not change at all. His divine consciousness covered his entire body as he tried his best to refine the two sources. Chapter 1347. Just as Lin Yu was in a state of calmness, forgetting everything around him, the surrounding universe, fire, and burial ice were surging towards Lin Yu relentlessly. Even the utmost being of the star world outside was caught off guard by this turn of events. Facing such a level of universe, fire, and burial ice, even an utmost being would find it hard to endure. Lin Yu was in danger. The brows of the utmost being of the star world were furrowed. He did not know why this was happening, just as he was considering whether he should make a move to save Lin Yu. That's not right. That lad is the one who is guiding so much of the source substance to his body. The utmost being of the star world noticed something and commented slowly. Lin Yu did not refine the two substances. Instead, he was making use of the two substances to undergo some sort of metamorphosis. The energy within his body had long settled to its limits. Other than the fact that he had yet to grasp the heaven's will, he was already at the pinnacle of the original God realm. The universe, fire, and burial ice began to transform into a small world around Lin Yu. Soon, it took the form of a cauldron, protecting Lin Yu within. The great Taos of the heavens could not get close to him. This place had turned into an unworldly land. At this moment, Lin Yu's body floated up slowly into the sky. He was in the middle of the 100,000 feet tall flames and icicles. An endless amount of aura was surging towards him. He did not refine the source substances of universe, fire, and burial ice immediately. Instead, he tried to break through to the Tao realm first. At this moment, Lin Yu's expression was calm. As the two substances intertwined, the inner world within his body began to reveal its aura. The various Tao laws within were turning corporeal continuously. This included the few Tao laws that he had comprehended and refined from the universe fire's body over the past few years. The Tao laws within the universe fire's body were all left behind by the utmost being of the past. They were filled with endless mysteries. Right now, they were all being refined together by Lin Yu. So that's the case. The face of the utmost being of the star world was grim. He realized that the path that Lin Yu wanted to take was way more horrifying than he had imagined. To think that he could comprehend so many Tao laws at the original God realm, and most of them came from the Tao laws of the utmost being when he was still alive. All the Tao laws intertwined around Lin Yu. Lin Yu's inner world began to rumble. The supreme bloodline of the abyss was also absorbed into Lin Yu's jar. Otherwise, these living beings could perish due to the changes in his inner world. At this moment, Lin Yu's inner world underwent a terrifying transformation. It was as if 12 unimaginable worlds were moving at a slow speed and were about to collide with each other. This was the step that Lin Yu had to take. He wanted to combine all of his inner worlds into one and evolve his strongest inner world. He wanted to use his inner world to evolve the heavenly Tao. He could take complete control of it. All sorts of Tao laws mixed together and intertwined in the sky above the inner world. Gradually, divine chains of order appeared. The embryonic form of the universe gradually appeared in the sky. Using his own inner world to evolve a world, utmost being Xing Chun could see through Lin Yu's thoughts. However, the danger that he had to endure was unimaginable. He could easily destroy his own foundation. In fact, there was a high possibility that his body and soul would be destroyed in the midst of the collision and fusion with his inner world. However, now that the fusion had begun, Lin Yu no longer had a path of retreat. The fact that he had opened up 12 levels of his inner world was already a taboo of taboos. And now, he wanted to take a step further and combine all 12 levels of his inner world into one. The difficulty level of this was unimaginable. Lin Yu was experiencing unimaginable pain right now. Cracks were appearing all over his body as fresh blood flowed out. In fact, even his consciousness was showing signs of dying. The first two levels of his inner world had already collided with each other. When Lin Yu opened up his inner world, the Tao laws contained within each level were different. Now that they were colliding, it was inevitable that they would reject each other. It was as though fire and water were incompatible. Poof! At this moment, Just as the two inner worlds were about to merge into one, Lin Yu's body could no longer endure it and turned into dust, scattering into the air. "Gather!" A cold voice rang out from the void. Lin Yu used the power of the God King's order to reverse time and space to forcefully pull his dying body back. The moment his body condensed, the two inner worlds collided and fused into one. Lin Yu's strength skyrocketed as though it had surpassed the peak of the original God realm. Currently, he was in a mysterious state that couldn't be detected. Without any hesitation, he fused the first two inner worlds together. The second fusion was undoubtedly much easier. Lin Yu used the first level of his inner world as the main force to suppress and devour the third level. Although the inner worlds formed by a few different Tao laws were still rejecting each other, the inner worlds were much wider than before. However, the fused inner world was clearly much larger, and the mysterious power nurtured within it was also extremely terrifying. It wasn't a simple addition anymore. It was a multiplication. Lin Yu's path seemed to be correct. He was evolving the heavenly Tao and creating his own heavenly Tao. Without a doubt, the increase in his strength was unparalleled. Because he was the true master of his own heavenly Tao, unlike others who controlled the heavenly Tao of the present world, there might be some rejection. The third level was completely fused into one. The fourth level, the fifth level, Lin Yu wasn't in a hurry. Just fusing the first 7 inner worlds had taken Lin Yu 100 years. What followed was the most difficult part. The inner world of the 8th level was vast, and the 9th level was taboo. Lin Yu didn't underestimate it. Now, hazy celestial light appeared around his body. Great Tao interweaved around his body, as if it had turned into an egg. There were divine chains of order on it, which turned into the symbols of the origin. A few ancient symbols suppressed above his head, emitting endless mysterious power to stabilize Lin Yu's body. Lin Yu had used almost all of his means. The inner world of the 8th level was fused together without any mishaps. Now, Lin Yu's body seemed to be splitting the world apart. The universe vaguely appeared, and the stars in it had already appeared. Lin Yu wasn't anxious about the 9th level. Instead, he settled down for a while. The shroud back then, and the supreme Tao laws that he had comprehended now, were all on the 9th level. There were peaks in the inner world that were colorful and enshrouded in multicolored light. A supreme aura was revealed, emitting a power that made one's heart palpitate. The 9th level was undoubtedly extremely difficult. However, it had already begun, and the trend of fusion was unstoppable. In just a few years, the two were about to collide. Within Lin Yu's body, where the inner world was, the chaotic divine thunder exploded and was reflected in reality. One could see that the eggshell, which was formed by the great path and order, was faintly glowing with lightning. The lightning flickered, revealing a power that made one's heart palpitate. The place where Lin Yu was hazy and filled with a chaotic aura. It was as if the world was truly splitting apart. In the end, the 9th level began to collide with the previous levels. Mountains and rivers collapsed, and the universe collapsed. The inner world of Lin Yu's inner world was like an apocalyptic scene. Almost at the same time, Lin Yu's body shattered. He could only use the power of the King of God's badge to reassemble with great difficulty. In the end, he had underestimated the 9th level, which involved the forbidden power of the inner world. At this moment, its appearance almost caused the inner world of the first 8 levels to collapse directly and cease to exist. The two were incompatible, and they wanted to destroy each other. This wasn't the result that Lin Yu wanted to see. If that was the case, Lin Yu's cultivation might be crippled because of this. Chapter 1348. However, in the face of danger, Lin Yu remained very calm and did not show any signs of panic. The Tao fruit of the present world rose to its feet and appeared above the collapsing universe within the inner world. A supreme wave of energy swept over. Lin Yu attached his divine consciousness to the present Tao fruit and reached out his right hand. A mysterious aura intertwined to form a large net that enveloped heaven and earth. It stabilized his inner world that was about to collapse. The two slowly merged. A vast and boundless inner world appeared, and the mountains, rivers, and plants within also changed. Towering divine mountains appeared one after another, reaching into the clouds and exploring unknown lands. Rather than calling them divine mountains, they were more like tombs. These were the concrete condensation of the supreme Tao laws of the past. Now that Lin Yu had comprehended them with the help of the origin fire, they were manifested in his inner world. 100 years passed in the blink of an eye. In the forbidden area of the strange race, the eggshell formed by Tao laws and order that surrounded Lin Yu began to slowly shatter. The eggshell turned into a light screen and merged into Lin Yu's body. He entered the inner world that was initially constructed. At this moment, the inner world formed by the three lives Tao fruit also began to enter the only vast and boundless inner world. The entire earth rumbled and shook. A supreme aura was revealed. The embryonic form of the sky also began to slowly appear due to the integration of order and Tao laws. The primeval stars and sun hung in the sky. Lin Yu's three inner worlds each occupied one side. In the only inner world, they evolved into three forbidden areas that emitted supreme auras. The inner world formed by Lin Yu's three lives Tao fruit was now completely integrated into the only inner world. However, Lin Yu could no longer use the power within. At this moment, the forbidden areas formed by the three inner worlds were like forgotten lands that had existed since ancient times. Although they contained endless power, they were extremely hazy and shrouded in a layer of fog that was intertwined with order. It was difficult to know the specific situation inside. In the devastated inner world, mountains, rivers, and plants began to appear as the Tao laws and order entered. Heaven and earth changed. This place became very primitive, as if it was the beginning of the world. Lin Yu's spiritual force entered his inner world and became the only heavenly Tao in this world. A green light emerged from Lin Yu's body. It was a strange phenomenon when the original God realm was about to reach the peak. After he controlled the heavenly Tao, he had truly broken through the original God realm and was about to enter the Tao realm. A mysterious aura appeared around him. Tao attraction is divided into persistence, kindness, emotion, body, spirit, obsession, kindness, emotion, battle physique, and divine will. Using one of them as a guide, one can ignite the divine fire in one's body and enter the domain of Tao attraction. Lin Yu began to think about how he would enter the domain of Tao attraction. There is no doubt that Lin Yu had reached the pinnacle of his combat constitution and spiritual will. If he used either of them, he would have the most stable foundation for reaching the Tao induction realm. However, Lin Yu was pondering whether he could use the 5 methods as a guide to break through to the realm of Tao induction. At the same time, he could ignite the 5 guides and draw the power of heaven and earth to baptize himself. Now that Lin Yu had evolved his only inner world, his body was extremely strong. He might be able to withstand the terrifying power of the 5 guides. Lin Yu closed his eyes. His battle physique began to emit a blazing heat and flames. At this moment, Lin Yu's body was burning fiercely, including divine will, obsession, and kindness. This kind of Tao fire was born without a name. It was the key to breaking through to the Tao induction realm. When ordinary people broke through to the Tao induction realm, even if they only ignited a wisp of it, it was already extremely terrifying. They would need to use their lives to refine it. They could easily die and their Tao would vanish. However, Lin Yu had walked very far in the original God realm. At this moment, the Tao fire on his body was expanding infinitely. His body was about to be completely melted. His entire body, both inside and outside, was suffering from a terrifying burning. It could be seen that Lin Yu's indestructible body was cracking. His bones were already black. His divine was being melted and evaporated. Obsession and the others, which were the figures of the people of the 12 universes, gradually appeared in his mind and were magnified infinitely. The Jade Pure Goddess, Qin Yi, Su Yishui, and the others seemed to appear in front of him. However, Lin Yu's heart was like a boulder when it came to the test of the state of mind. He couldn't activate it. This was what he had cultivated after 100,000 years of reincarnation. No one could shake it. In the blink of an eye, 500 years had passed. The Tao fire on Lin Yu's body had gradually subsided. Lin Yu's fair and flawless body appeared. Wind and thunder interweaved, and no flaws could be seen. It was like the most beautiful work of art carved by the heavens. Lin Yu's expression was calm. A white robe appeared on his body, and his black hair was scattered. His body revealed incomparable strength. He had truly broken through to the Tao induction realm. With the 5 Tao fires as the guide, he had stepped into the strongest realm. His foundation was incomparably solid, almost flawless. The Overlord of the Stars nodded in satisfaction. Using the 5 seals as the foundation was the key to stepping into the Overlord realm. Now, Lin Yu had shown that kind of aptitude. The space-time Tao law appeared beside him again. Here, the origins of universe fire and burial ice began to appear around Lin Yu's body. Then, they slowly fused into his eyes. The entire forbidden ground was shrouded by the aura of universe fire and burial ice. The two substances seemed to have turned into 2 huge dragons that occupied the sky and continuously entered Lin Yu's body. After he broke through, he needed a large amount of energy substances. At the same time, his eyes were also undergoing an unimaginable transformation. In his left eye, the origin of universe fire was constantly precipitating, while in his right eye, the origin of burial ice was being refined. He wanted to use his eyes as a medium to absorb the 2 substances and let them undergo an unimaginable transformation. This action was undoubtedly bold. The entire world was shrouded by this terrifying aura. Lin Yu's figure was completely submerged by the universe fire and burial ice. The gap between the 2 areas was also completely submerged at this moment. Under the collision of the 2 substances, the entire place began to boil. Heaven and earth were being refined. They turned into symbols of the origin and fell into the universe fire, being burned clean. What's happening? At this moment, King Yu, who was in the ancestral land, felt the terrifying fluctuations in the forbidden ground. The edge of the Ming realm was a place that caused their expressions to change. Even the ancestral land would find it difficult to recover if the creepy tribe was tainted by even a drop of the aura here. The Overlord of the Stars went into hibernation. However, when he saw the black gas in the direction of the ancestral land, King Yu appeared here. He was very far away, but under the illumination of the universe fire and burial ice, green smoke continuously appeared on his body. He couldn't withstand this power, especially when the place had already started to riot. King Yu also couldn't find out what was happening inside. It has no effect on the Ming realm, King Yu concluded. Now, the ancestral land was at a critical stage of recovery, and now, he was the only one who had recovered. The Azure King had already entered a state of cultivation, so he couldn't leave the ancestral land for too long. After observing for a while, he disappeared and returned to the creepy tribe's ancestral land. The strange phenomenon lasted for several hundred years. When the aura here was completely restrained, even the universe fire and burial ice of the forbidden ground weakened a little. Lin Yu's eyes became extremely terrifying. 2 origin symbols appeared in them, one emitting a red light, the other emitting a white light. They had the power to pierce through heaven and earth. When the symbols in Lin Yu's eyes disappeared, he regained his calm. However, the aura on his body was difficult to understand. Chapter 1349. Now that Lin Yu had absorbed most of the origins of universe fire and burial ice, coupled with the fact that he had broken through to the Tao realm, his entire body was emitting a heart-palpitating power. Now, even if someone who was a realm higher than him saw it, they could not help but feel apprehensive. At the origin, Universe fire and burial ice were substances that did not belong to this world. No one knew where they came from or why they were born. Lin Yu had now opened up his only inner world and formed the heavenly Tao. The power that he possessed had already surpassed the understanding of people and was almost to the level of transcendence. He was no longer restricted by the world. Thank you, Senior, for protecting me. Lin Yu came to the side of the Overlord of the Stars and cupped his hands seriously. When he absorbed universe fire and burial ice, he had already sensed that King Yu had been here before, although it was difficult for him to find out the situation inside. But Lin Yu was grateful to the Overlord of the Stars for guarding this place for 1,000 years. If the Overlord of the Stars had not brought him here, and the heavenly Tao did not exist, perhaps it would have been difficult for him to merge his inner world into one and would have failed due to the influence of the world. And now that he had mastered universe fire and burial ice, these were two extremely mysterious powers and substances. They had an unimaginable restraining effect on a strange race. And under the smelting of the origins of universe fire and burial ice, his eyes had changed and could see through all the origins of time. At the same time, it was an extremely powerful killing move. This power did not belong to this world, and nothing could stop it. It's fine. You did well. The Overlord of the Stars nodded in satisfaction. They returned to the residence of the Overlord of the Stars. But what surprised Lin Yu was that the residence of the Overlord of the Stars was in the strange ancestral land. This place was different from what Lin Yu had imagined. It was filled with a strange aura, and he did not feel anything strange. This puzzled Lin Yu. In the ancestral land, only one person can be influenced subtly. Even the Overlord would find it difficult to escape. You can't stay here for too long. The Overlord of the Stars said slowly. Back then, in order to gain the trust of the Bizarre race, Star Sovereign had no choice but to take the initiative to come into contact with the darkness and enter the Bizarre race's ancestral ground to comprehend the darkness. After countless years, he had almost turned into a strange throne. Both his spirit and body had been contaminated. Right now, I'm going to send you out of the Ming world. When the time comes and I'm truly lost, I'll think of a way to bring 1 or 2 king-level magnates with me. The utmost being of Star Palace said indifferently. For the current him, taking away 1 or 2 sovereigns would not be a problem. But he would also die because of this. Lin Yu was solemn. He bowed towards the Overlord of the Stars. He was worthy of Lin Yu's respect. A person who bore the infamy of the ancient times entered the Ming world alone to comprehend the strange matter and was contaminated by the strange ancestral land. Perhaps even on the day they passed away, no one knew that the supreme stars had always been protecting the living beings of the universe. Lin Yu had already stepped onto the altar. This was a special technique mastered by the strange throne. There was nothing that could be scouted. If you need me at that time, I can be here anytime, Lin Yu said solemnly. When that time came, Lin Yu would definitely not turn a blind eye to the sorrowful solo battle of Star Realm. At most, he would just fuse his past and future Tao fruits once more. For now, try your best not to fuse with your own Tao fruits. It will only bring you harm. The utmost being of Star Palace knew about this problem as well. I am someone who was abandoned to begin with. The utmost being of Star Palace chuckled indifferently and continued. If you can, take this item and offer it to an old friend of mine. The utmost being of Star Palace took out a handkerchief that had a few stars embroidered on it. There were even bloodstains on it. The utmost being of Star Palace sent the coordinates to Lin Yu. Immediately after, the altar lit up with a bright light. A terrifying shockwave surged over as Lin Yu's figure disappeared in the blink of an eye. After an unknown amount of time, Lin Yu arrived at a barren land where the primitive Tao laws appeared once more. Lin Yu returned to the origin ground once more. 1,500 years felt like a lifetime ago, causing Lin Yu to lament in his heart. He had no intentions of returning to the ancient city right now. Since the upper echelons of the ancient city have already chosen to do this, I'll head to the ancient city when the time comes and settle the score personally, Lin Yu said slowly. In his eyes, killing intent towards the Wang family was already surging. Lin Yu was betrayed by the ancient city and sent to the strange lands as a captive. If not for the Star Master stepping in to save him at the crucial moment, Lin Yu might have already fallen in the Radiant World. Lin Yu arrived at the location of the first ancient city. It was filled with ruins, and the utmost being's burial cloth came from this place. After Lin Yu lamented for a moment, he headed in another direction. He wanted to build another city in the land of origin to guard the universe. He wanted to build a true imperial pass. In the battlefield of the past, there were still terrifying Tao marks interweaving. The origin flame appeared in the origin ground and absorbed all the Tao law traces here into its body. Lin Yu had already released the group of people he rescued from the Radiant World from the clay jar. Looking at the devastated land, it was a novel sight for them. They had always been oppressed. Other than the Abyss, they were also used as a trial target by the strange races. Death was a common thing. Thank you for saving us, Divine King Lin. The old man's limbs were now fully grown. At this moment, he led the group to kneel on the ground and bowed to Lin Yu to express his gratitude. Some people were still in a numb state, but compared to 1,000 years ago, they were already much better. They all had supreme bloodlines, and their talents were all top-notch. Right now, the ancient city is without Tao, bowing and scraping. Returning there is already no need. I wish to establish a true imperial pass here. In the following years, resist the true abnormalities. Are you all willing? Lin Yu didn't force them, instead asking for their opinions. After all, fighting against the strange races meant that they needed to use blood and bones. Lin Yu respected their wishes. If they didn't want to, he could send these people to the ancient city. Our ancestors all died in the hands of the strange races. We have endured the humiliation for too long. Now that we can kill the enemy, why wouldn't we be willing? The young man had now grown into an adult, his body exuding a terrifying aura. He was the one with the highest talent among everyone. In his eyes, there were two pupils. Dual pupils, since ancient times, it was the symbol of a saint. At this moment, the young man had already begun to awaken, showing signs of atavism. At this moment, everyone knelt on the ground, shouting in unison, wanting to fight the strange races to the end. Lin Yu nodded. He used a method, and a grand city rose from the ground. The Tao laws and order of his inner world were supported on it, carrying an undying aura. This place will be called Emperor City from now on, the only one throughout all of history. Lin Yu slowly said, his voice like a great bell, shaking up everyone's hearts. Emperor City structure was just like the realm Seastone City Lin Yu had witnessed before. At the same time, Lin Yu used Universe Flame and Burial Ice surrounding Emperor City, forming two great rivers that would never be extinguished. Everyone moved inside. Origin Flame also did its part. He used 100 years of time to engrave the supreme Tao laws, using them to strengthen Emperor City. An undying and imperishable aura was displayed. Even from extremely far away, one could see a grand city towering at the limits of heaven and earth, carrying a boundless will. Lin Yu used Universe Flame to refine his stone sword for 100 years, now already infinitely close to the highest level. After close to 2,000 years, it's time to demand an explanation from the ancient city. Lin Yu's eyes were cold, looking in a direction. Chapter 1350. Most importantly, Lin Yu wanted to bring Lin Li over. The ancient city had already lost its historical vigor. There was no longer a need for him to stay there. He might be betrayed during the final invasion. Lin Yu had already treated the young man as his disciple. After giving him some instructions, he taught him the method to control the universe fire and burial ice outside the imperial city. The young man was nameless. He requested to take on Lin Yu's surname, Lin Yin, which meant that he would never forget the vengeance of his ancestors. After that, Lin Yu stepped on the road to the ancient city alone. With Lin Yu's current cultivation realm and the Space Tao law, he arrived at the ancient city in half a month's time. At this moment, he was dressed in white and had a slender figure. He looked up into the sky. Lin Yu, I'm here for an explanation. His voice wasn't loud, but it could be heard clearly above the ancient city. Lin Yu. Above the ancient city, Wang Tianjuan's figure appeared. She looked down, her eyes moved. After nearly 2,000 years, she saw this figure again. What he did back then made many people in the ancient city bitterly disappointed. The old monsters even used the power of the heaven refining flask to erase that memory in everyone's heart. At this moment, Linley woke up in the secret ground. After 2,000 years, his body had already decayed beyond recognition. After coming to the ancient city, he learned that he had once injured the Wang family patriarch. In the end, some people in the secret ground intervened and stopped him. Now, he was still bound by the god order chains. However, with Linley's strength, no one could truly trap him unless a true utmost being intervened. In the ancient city, if people like the first emperor didn't come out, no one was his match. Now, the Wang family patriarch was still recuperating. At this moment, he learned of Lin Yu's arrival. The entire ancient city was shaken. Didn't Lin Yu die in the hands of the strange beings? No one had forgotten such a stunning person from 2,000 years ago. They still remembered him clearly. When Bao Jiaming arrived at the ancient city, he said emotionally, Lin Yu never died at the hands of the anomalies. He was betrayed by the ancient city's upper echelons and was taken as a hostage. He was escorted to the land of the anomalies in exchange for 100 years of peace. Bao Jiaming was now clearing Lin Yu's name. However, as Wang Tianjun glared at him, Bao Jiaming spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered back several feet. The matter of Lin Yu had always been a secret among the upper echelons and was not allowed to be mentioned. In the memories of the people of Gu City, Lin Yu had died in a strange battle in the immortal graveyard. But how terrifying was Lin Yu's talent? Among those of the same generation, who could be his match? Everyone was shocked. No wonder 1,000 years ago, after Linley had returned, because of the death of Lin Yu, he had attacked and almost killed the Wang clan patriarch. The reason why Linley knew the truth was because Bao Jiaming had sealed away his memories this entire time. The power of the God King's token exploded forth. The establishment of Gu City was also thanks to the efforts of his first ancestor. Thus, the restrictions on it were unable to stop Lin Yu at all. The restrictions opened, and Lin Yu entered. Now, Tian Yi had also completely grasped the power of the heavenly Tao in the origin grounds. Now that he had broken through to the Tao induction realm, his body was in a state of chaos, and even his figure was blurry. He appeared in Gu City. Now, the forces that Gu City could gather had all arrived. At this moment, they were all looking at Lin Yu with solemn expressions. They were very shocked. After 1,000 years, Lin Yu had stayed in that strange place and become a prisoner. Yet, he had still broken through to the Tao induction realm. Moreover, the aura on his body was extremely powerful, seemingly no weaker than Tian Yi's. Could it be that Lin Yu has already joined the strange tribe? Someone's eyes were filled with worry. If that was really the case, no one could imagine how terrifying his future accomplishments would be. Even the old ancestor of Tsang Yu Pavilion frowned deeply. This was because the aura Lin Yu had now revealed was no weaker than Tian Yi's. Tian, he was an existence that had grasped the heavenly Tao in the origin grounds. He was the first person since ancient times, but now he could not suppress a cultivator of the same realm. This was so unbelievable, and Lin Yu's cultivation method was still of the universe. If that was really the case, the old ancestor of Tsang Yu Pavilion frowned deeply and said, could it be that this child has joined the darkness and grasped the heavenly Tao of the Ming world? He could not imagine any other possibilities. Now, Lin Yu was expressionless. It was obvious that he had come to hold him accountable. We can't let him in. He might have already joined the strange tribe. Wang Tianjun said coldly. All the powerhouses moved out, wanting to stop Lin Yu. If he takes another step forward, kill him on the spot. Wang Tianjun looked at Lin Yu and scolded coldly. Lin Yu did not have any strange aura on him. This was what made the old ancestor of Tsang Yu Pavilion suspicious. At this moment, Tian Yi spoke. Let Brother Lin in. He doesn't have the aura of the strange tribe. Now that Tian, he was in control of the heaven refining gourd and also grasped the heavenly Tao of the origin grounds, he was very sensitive to strange auras. His words meant that Lin Yu had not joined the strange tribe and had completely fallen into the darkness. Little ancestor Tiani, I don't think so. We can't let him in. Wang Tianjun did not withdraw the order. Instead, he said directly, right now, he might not have been tainted by the strange substance. He has great ambitions. If we let him in, the ancient city can no longer have any problems. Wang Tianjun did not back down. However, at this moment, a cold shout descended like the might of the heavens. Who dares to stop the 12 godly kings of the universe from entering the city? Linley directly broke the divine chains of order and arrived above the ancient city. However, right now, Lin Yu looked at these people who were trying to stop him with an indifferent gaze. With a raise of his hand, everyone was sent flying. Although most of the people who were trying to stop Lin Yu were already at the Tao induction realm, they were still no match for Lin Yu. In fact, they couldn't even stop him in the slightest. Lin Yu was very emotional. Linley was very emotional. He looked at the current Lin Yu, and, at the same time, his face was filled with relief. Back then, in order to search for the lost Great Tao pill for Lin Yu, he had left for close to 1,000 years. At the same time, he had revealed himself in a forgotten ground and received the healing aura left behind by an utmost being, extending his lifespan by 3,000 years. However, when he returned to the ancient city, he received the news of Lin Yu's passing. This caused him to be unable to restrain his anger, and he went on a rampage. If no one had stopped him, the old ancestor of the Wang family might have fallen completely. Lin Yu arrived at the ancient city. His entire being was as calm as an ancient well, and no one could tell what he was feeling. His old friends, including Bao Jianming, Fu Lingyun, and Bai Lu, all came to Lin Yu's side. After each of them responded, Lin Yu looked at Lin Li, then clasped his hands apologetically. "I've made you worry, Elder Lin." One could tell that Lin Li's condition was quite good. He should have received some sort of good fortune. This caused Lin Yu to feel delighted. "It's good that you're back." Lin Li laughed. Everyone exchanged pleasantries. However, Lin Yu looked at Wang Tianjun and said calmly, "Today, I've come to settle some accounts with those who betrayed me. Then I'll leave." As soon as these words came out, everyone present was shocked. Lin Yu's current cultivation level had increased by another level. In the ancient city, aside from the upper echelons, there was probably no one who could stop him. Some people naturally knew who had betrayed Lin Yu. Chapter 1351. Lin Yu's tone was cold and domineering. The first to bear the brunt was naturally the Wang family. Back then, it was the old master of the Wang family who personally sealed his cultivation and released him from the ancient city. He even forcefully removed the shroud of the utmost being. Now that Lin Yu had come to the ancient city, it was to settle the score. "Taoist Lin, where do you intend to go?" Bao Jiaming asked softly. Even though he hadn't known Lin Yu for a long time, they were close friends. Lin Yu had even saved him in the ancient grounds. Therefore, Bao Jiaming had always been grateful to him. Now that Lin Yu wanted to leave, Bao Jiaming couldn't help but frown. Right now, the ancient city was the only place that was relatively safe. There were traces of the mysterious race in the other places of the origin grounds. If he were alone, he might meet with misfortune. However, Bao Jiaming thought about it again. Around 2,000 years ago, there was a change in the land of the mysterious race. Combining all these factors, Lin Yu might have made use of some special means to strike. As such, the mysterious race didn't attack the ancient city at the agreed time of 100 years. The entire place fell silent. Shall the old man go first, or shall the young one go first? Lin Yu looked at Wang Tianjun and asked indifferently. Wang Chuan wanted to strike. However, he felt a deep sense of helplessness. Even though he was only at the half-step Dao realm, his talent was top-notch. In terms of talent, he could already be considered to be at the top. In an era, there were only a few people who could reach such a high realm at such a young age. However, Wang Chuan had already lost to Lin Yu once. Back then, his cultivation realm was slightly higher than Lin Yu's. But now, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. When Lin Yu said, "Young one," he didn't include Wang Chuan. His gaze was fixed on Wang Tianjun. Even though Wang Tianjun was about to break through to the half-step utmost being and was already a top-notch existence in the ancient city, Lin Yu still didn't have the slightest bit of fear. His killing intent was directed at Wang Tianjun. Back when Wang Tianjun had entered the ancient city, he had coveted the divine items on him and had made things difficult for him many times. After the battle with King Tsong and King Yu, the Wang family was the first to betray Lin Yu and sent him to the land of the strange creatures. Lin Yu knew that he wasn't someone who cared about the big picture. At that time, the ancient city was not completely powerless. However, they chose to hand him over, considering that he had to preserve his strength. This was really disappointing. "Brat, do you think you're invincible just because you've reached the Tao induction realm?" Wang Tianjuan's eyes were cold as he faced the young man's murderous intent. Right now, the atmosphere in the ancient city was extremely stifling. Everyone looked at Lin Yu and the Wang family. "I've never thought that I'm invincible, but killing you is as easy as pie," Lin Yu said indifferently. Instead of getting angry, Wang Tianjun laughed and said, "If Lin Li doesn't do anything, who do you think you are? If old Lin doesn't do anything, I'll kill you today." Lin Yu continued, "Put away your petty and laughable thoughts. This battle, regardless of life or death. Do you dare?" The words "do you dare" caused the expressions of some of Gu Cheng's peers, who had entered the ancient land with Lin Yu, to change. Lin Yu has just reached the Tao induction realm. How can he dare to face Wang Tianjun, who's about to reach the half-step original God realm? Some people looked at him in disbelief. At the later stage, the gap of a small realm was like a natural chasm that was difficult to cross. Those who could reach this realm were all outstanding figures since ancient times. Their talents were unparalleled for a period of time. But now, Lin Yu dared to fight someone who was 2 realms above him. Everyone was doubtful. Some people even thought that Lin Yu was courting death. "Maybe Lin Yu has another purpose for insisting on this battle," someone guessed. This was also what worried Wang Tianjun. She was very cautious in her actions. This was also one of the reasons why the ancient city gradually lost its courage after Wang Tianjun took control of it. As I said, I won't interfere in a battle at the same realm. Lin Li knew Lin Yu's personality. He wouldn't do something he wasn't sure of. At this moment, he also looked at the Wang family. His eyes were bright like a heavenly sword, piercing through the secret land. The Wang family's forefather, who was recovering, was alerted. He also appeared here. He looked at Lin Li and Lin Yu, his face changing unconsciously. From the other people's soul consciousness, he understood the current situation. Everyone in Ancient City knew that he had nearly been killed by Lin Li. He had lost a lot of face, and his hatred for Lin Li had reached its peak. Now, after seeing Lin Yu return, he wanted to kill Wang Tianjun. He was even more infuriated by the news that he was going to purge the Wang clan. He didn't think that Lin Yu, who had just reached the Tao induction realm, could pose any threat to Wang Tianjun. "Wang Tianjun, go kill him," the Wang family's forefather said slowly. At this moment, everyone was looking at the Wang family's forefather. Since he had already spoken, Wang Tianjun naturally couldn't refuse. "I hope you won't go back on your words. Life and death are up to fate," the Wang family's forefather said slowly. Tian Ija sighed. He used the space of the heaven refining gourd to cover this place and prevent the battle from affecting the ancient city. This battle, when the Wang family and some old monsters betrayed Lin Yu, was already unavoidable. Some people even began to suspect that if Lin Yu really had the power to wipe out the Wang family, would the forces who had proposed to take him as a hostage and send him to the strange ancestral land also suffer calamity? Everyone held their breaths. Lin Yu and Wang Tianjun stood opposite each other. This battle was completely incomprehensible. At this moment, the power in Wang Tianjuan's body had already begun to surge. He didn't want to give Lin Yu any chance. He wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Lin Yu returned from the strange ancestral land. He knew a little about the strange situation in the ancestral land from the heaven refining gourd's reflection. After analyzing from many aspects, it was very likely that Lin Yu had used some unknown power to fight in the ancestral land. The fluctuations on it definitely belonged to the supreme power. It had already affected space and time. If Lin Yu had this power now, Wang Tianjun knew that he wouldn't be able to survive. At this moment, Wang Tianjun was afraid before the battle. He was constantly thinking, worried that Lin Yu would use that power. Because of this, he had been on guard. Lin Yu held the stone sword that was about to become a supreme weapon. He took a step forward and used the world's near hand. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of Wang Tianjun. He swept out the sword. The space of the heaven refining gourd couldn't withstand it. Lin Yu didn't dare to be careless when facing someone like Wang Tianjun. He raised his hand and used his supreme power. The only inner world in his body resonated with it and supported him. At the same time, the endless power of Tao transformed into Azura's shadow and appeared in the void. He put his palms together and suppressed Wang Tianjun. The attack with just a raise of his hand was already so terrifying. Everyone could feel this power. Beside Tian Yi, the patriarch of the Azure Universe Pavilion frowned slightly and murmured, "It's not the Ming world, nor is it the heavenly Tao aura of the origin land. He has stepped on another path, using himself as the heavenly Tao." Tian Yi said slowly. One could tell from his tone that he was slightly surprised. This path has been jointly deduced by the supreme beings. However, my father once said that this is a dead end and it's impossible to walk through. I didn't expect it. Tian Yi sighed. He thought of Lin Yu, who had condensed the 12th layer of his inner world. He had already created the taboo of taboo in the original God realm. It wasn't impossible for him to walk through the dead end that his father had mentioned. The terrifying power fluctuations could still suppress Wang Tianjun, even though Lin Yu was only at the early stage of the Tao realm. Chapter 1352. Wang Tianjun's expression changed drastically. Lin Yu hadn't used that power yet, but he still felt threatened by the means he was using. It didn't seem like a power that an early-stage Tao realm cultivator could use. But in the blink of an eye, the sword light and Azura's attack were already in front of him. Wang Tianjun didn't have time to think. The walking stick in his hand turned into a golden dragon with a prayer bead in its mouth. Tao power was dense, and in the blink of an eye, it became 10,000 feet long and wrapped around Azura's figure. Then, her clothes fluttered, and her old body seemed to be recovering. In the blink of an eye, armor appeared on her body, and she was like a Valkyrie, showing a terrifying aura. I know, you can't use that power now. Previously, Wang Tianjun had been wary of Lin Yu. But now, after seeing Lin Yu display his means, he was basically certain. Lin Yu couldn't use that means now. I just don't want to use that power to kill you, Lin Yu said casually. His words were calm, and he didn't seem to be joking. This made Wang Tianjun's expression turn serious again. At this time, Wang Tianjun's white hair had turned black, and his eyes were no longer turbid. The golden armor on his body shone brightly, revealing his strength. Since that's the case, I'll kill you before you use that power. Wang Tianjun had recovered to his peak state, revealing strong confidence. She was now infinitely close to the half-step utmost being. The terrifying power on her body made everyone present tremble and retreat, even though they were separated by the space of the heaven refining pot. Only Lin Li and the others stood in the distance with a calm expression. Bao Jianming and the other two couldn't help but sweat for Lin Yu. Wang Tianjun's aura was so strong that it almost made people feel that he was invincible. Now, Azura's figure carried Lin Yu's Tao and order, and it had already suppressed the dragon formed by Wang Tianjun's walking stick. The sky was torn apart. The power of the heaven refining pot blazed a little more. Only then would he be able to withstand the battle between the two. Now, even in the face of Wang Tianjun, who had recovered to his peak state, Lin Yu was still calm, without the slightest panic. The power within his inner world was constantly surging, and all of it was added to Lin Yu's body. Now that his inner heaven and earth had fused into one, it was not a simple addition, but a multiplication. He had already surpassed the original God realm. If Lin Yu were to unleash all of the mystic powers in his inner world, he would be no weaker than the power of the entire origin grounds. Furthermore, Lin Yu is the true ruler of the inner world, standing above many great Taoists. Now, his figure was already standing on the great path. Tiani was outside and could clearly sense it. Even if he made a move now and borrowed the power of the great path of the land of origin, it would still be difficult to suppress Lin Yu. The aura on his body was too terrifying. It did not seem like the power of a Tao realm cultivator. If it weren't for the fact that they could clearly sense Lin Yu's current strength, they would even suspect that Lin Yu had already broken through the Tao realm when he was in the land of the strange races and had ascended to the ranks of the highest. The two Tao techniques collided, causing the void to collapse. The entire ancient city shook because of it, and the restrictions on it glowed, stabilizing the entire ancient city. At this moment, a dragon roar resounded. After thousands of years of slumber, the first emperor had returned to the world and recovered to his peak state, exuding a supreme pressure. The ancestral dragon appeared under the sky, entrenched in the ancient city, exuding endless power. Lin Yu and Wang Tianjun's movements were clearly sluggish. The first emperor appeared on the ancient city battlefield, exuding endless majesty. "You all continue," the first emperor said lightly. He stood on the ancestral dragon. Countless people's faces were filled with excitement. Now that the first emperor had recovered, the ancient city situation was undoubtedly much better. Even though the first emperor was in a deep slumber, one only needed a simple deduction to know what had happened in the ancient city in the past thousands of years. The Wang family had thought that after the first emperor had recovered, he would stop this war. But what they did not expect was the first emperor made his move, and a strand of aura emanated from his body, suppressing the Wang family's old master's cultivation base to the Tao realm late stage before throwing him into the battlefield. "Thank you, first emperor." Lin Yu smiled. This was exactly what he wanted. "Let's kill them all in one go." Lin Yu looked at the addition of the Wang family's old master with a calm expression. Right now, his body was shrouded in these two auras. At this point, he no longer hid his true strength. Red and white appeared in his eyes. A power that did not belong to this world was constantly being revealed. This made everyone feel threatened. Universe fire and burial ice. Even the utmost beings would be affected and might fall within. Right now, Lin Yu had already grasped all of the origins. Even with his current strength, he could not unleash all of it. But within the Tao realm, it was an invincible existence. No one could defend against it. The first emperor merely looked at everything calmly. No one would have thought that the first emperor would stand on Lin Yu's side. Evidently, he despised the actions of the Wang family and did not approve of them. Now that he had recovered, it was to purge the ancient city and prepare for the upcoming war. The first emperor recognized the power that Lin Yu possessed and spoke up. "To profit from a disaster, that's not too bad. To be able to gain the approval of an utmost being." One could tell just how horrifying the universe fire and burial ice that Lin Yu possessed were. Back then, many utmost beings had designs on the universe fire and burial ice. However, only Lin Xian had the rights to possess them. But because he knew that he did not have much time left, he left them in the Ming world for a fated person to obtain. But who would have thought that time would change, and, in the end, they would arrive in the hands of Lin Yu? This seemed to be fate, and Lin Xian had deduced it long ago. The Wang clan patriarch felt his scalp go numb. Because of Lin Li, his injuries had yet to recover, and his quintessence had nearly been destroyed by Lin Li. His cultivation state was still being suppressed. However, he was still a half-step utmost being after all. He only felt that if the first emperor were to stand on Lin Yu's side, even if he were to kill Lin Yu, the Wang family might not be able to raise their heads again in the future. But no matter what, the only thing he could do now was to wipe out Lin Yu completely. This was an unstable factor. He did not believe that Lin Yu, who was only at the initial Dao realm, could fight against two peak Dao realm beings at the same time. It wasn't just those old freaks who were alarmed. Even the residents of the ancient city felt that it was impossible. The difference in cultivation state was simply too great. Lin Yu frowned. His seniority with the first emperor could be considered to be equal. Even though he believed in Lin Yu, against two Dao realm beings, it was inevitable that there would be problems. This was especially so for the old master of the Wang family. He had already broken through to the half-step utmost being for countless years, and had settled down sufficiently. He had long polished his previous cultivation state to perfection. If that was the case, even if the later generations were to be at the same level as him, there would be an extremely obvious difference. However, the aura on Lin Yu's body had become incomparably sharp with the appearance of the universe fire and burial ice. It was as though it could even bury the universe. Back then, that place was used as a cremation ground. The universe fire and burial ice nurtured an endless amount of terror. Lin Xian is indeed omnipotent, and his descendants have inherited it perfectly. The first emperor could not help but praise. Chapter 1353. Is that universe fire and burial ice? Lin Li's expression froze. Although he had never entered the strange ancestral land, he had learned many things from Lin Xian and knew about universe fire and burial ice. Now that Lin Yu had obtained them, Lin Li looked gratified. At the same time, there was also a look of reminiscence in his eyes, as if he had seen the days when he fought with Lin Xian. On the battlefield, Wang Tianjun and the Wang family patriarch had already used their strongest techniques. Golden light shone from their bodies as if they could destroy everything. The Gung Metal Dao Law appeared. It was even more powerful than when Lin Yu had fought Wang Chuan. However, Lin Yu was now surrounded by universe fire and burial ice, and the space-time Dao Law was faintly visible. He was almost invincible. No one could resist this power. Lin Yu pushed forward as if he was invincible. At this moment, Wang Tianjun and the Wang family patriarch finally realized the seriousness of the problem. The two of them, who were at the peak of the Dao channeling realm, were actually suppressed by Lin Yu and had almost no power to fight back. The Dao laws on their bodies had been completely shattered by universe fire and burial ice and turned into nothingness. Impossible. Even if you have obtained a heaven-defying creation, your cultivation realm is already there. This is a natural chasm that can't be crossed. The Wang family patriarch condensed a golden saber in his hand that emitted a dazzling light and slashed directly at Lin Yu. Lin Yu flicked his fingers and universe fire appeared, turning into a pair of large hands that caught the golden saber. Lin Yu shouted softly and the golden saber shattered. Universe fire followed the direction of the Wang family patriarch and eroded over, forcing the Wang family patriarch to shake off the golden saber. Then, together with Wang Tianjun, they charged towards Lin Yu. Universe fire was temporarily forced back. There was still a huge gap in cultivation realm between Lin Yu and universe fire. Otherwise, universe fire wouldn't have been swept away by two people at the Dao channeling realm. Burial ice appeared and turned into ice spikes that pierced through the universe. Lin Yu stood on top of the icicle, holding the stone sword in his hand as he charged towards the two. Without these two substances, you are nothing. Wang Tianjun felt that he had lost face. Even though she was working together with her family's old ancestor, they were still being suppressed. They were all peak existences in the ancient city. How could they endure such humiliation? However, reality slapped them hard in the face. Under Lin Yu's sword, both of them were repelled at the same time. Everyone couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. The battle prowess Lin Yu displayed was a little too ferocious. Some of them were already comparing Lin Yu to the powerful beings of the past. At this age, would a powerful being amongst the utmost beings possess such battle prowess? Nothing was known. He is stronger than me, Tian, he said. Only then did everyone hold their breaths. Tian-E was hailed as the existence with the strongest innate talent in history. He wasn't any weaker than the utmost being of the past. But now, he had such an evaluation of Lin Yu. This meant that the battle prowess that Lin Yu was displaying right now was at least on par with the powerful beings of the past. How shocking and terrifying was that? Even the old ancestor of the Azure Universe Pavilion and the others were feeling regret. If they hadn't taken Lin Yu as a captive and sent him to the land of the strange race, at that time, an utmost being of the current era might appear in the ancient city once more. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Right now, Lin Yu is already disappointed in the ancient city. After dealing with those who had attacked him, he would leave. At this moment, the old ancestor of the Azure Universe Pavilion recalled some of the utmost beings of the past. Because of their disappointment in the masses, they left and created a forbidden ground for themselves, no longer bothering with the affairs of the world. No one knew which path Lin Yu would take in the end. On the battlefield, Lin Yu was surrounded by universe fire and burial ice. The stone sword in his hand was simple and unadorned. Right now, the weapon spirit of the Emperor's sword was perfectly compatible with the stone sword, and it was able to burst forth with unparalleled power. Even though every single sword was defended against, the stone sword could slash away one's Tao fruit. Right now, the strength of Wang Tianjun and the old ancestor of the Wang family was dropping continuously. Wang Tianjun was starting to panic. If they didn't kill Lin Yu soon, their cultivation states might drop as well. This was an irreversible trend. It's that weapon in his hand. It was once the weapon of an utmost being. The old ancestor of the Wang family recognized the stone sword in Lin Yu's hand and was extremely shocked. Right now, their cultivation states had dropped from Tao Realm Pinnacle to Tao Realm Late Stage. This was an extremely strange power that was hard to defend against. A sense of weakness struck them. The old ancestor of the Wang family was severely injured to begin with. Right now, his injuries were hard to suppress as black blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. However, under the siege of two experts, Lin Yu wasn't having a good time either. Blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. A huge breath appeared on his shoulder, and the Gung Metal Dao Law spread out from it, preventing his injuries from recovering. This was done by the old ancestor of the Wang family. Apart from this, there were many wounds of various sizes on his body. However, Lin Yu was still calm. Right now, he was above burial ice, as if he was the master of heaven and earth. He was cold and emotionless. Right now, he had already made up his mind to eliminate the Wang family. This was an explanation for what happened previously. Since that's all you've got, then just die like this. Lin Yu was now seriously injured, but he was still calm and collected, showing great confidence. Lin Yu's gaze exploded. Wang Tianjun felt a chill down her spine. She wanted to dodge, but it was too late. In the blink of an eye, her figure was engulfed by the cosmic fire. Lin Yu's eyes were dripping with blood as well. He used the power of the space-time Dao Law to condense origin runes in his eyes, causing everything within the universe fire to burn instantly. No! Wang Tianjun screamed out. Right now, she was enduring endless pain. Universe fire didn't belong to this world. It could burn everything in this world. Even though Wang Tianjun had used all of her methods, she still couldn't break free from the burning of the universe fire. Until the target died, the universe fire wouldn't be extinguished. This was the horrifying part of the universe fire. The old ancestor of the Wang family was already breaking out in cold sweat. However, that place was already blocked by the endless universe fire. It was impossible for him to save Wang Tianjun now. Lin Yu stood above burial ice with a cold look in his eyes. He didn't care about the blood that was dripping from his eyes at all. Lad, you deserve to die. The old ancestor of the Wang family gritted his teeth. Wang Tianjun was the one who had the most hope of breaking through to the half-step upmost being in the Wang family. However, in a short period of time, she was burned to ashes. Even her true spirit dissipated. I regret not killing you back then and handing you over to the strange race. The old ancestor of the Wang family said coldly. Do you regret it? Lin Yu looked at the old ancestor of the Wang family in disdain. Unfortunately, you don't have the chance anymore. Lin Yu's eyes narrowed. The old ancestor of the Wang family had a bad feeling. Immediately, his figure disappeared into the distance. However, Lin Yu didn't intend to continue using the power in his eyes. As the old ancestor of the Wang family moved, Lin Yu had already deduced his next position through the power of the ancient runes. Poof! Blood was dripping. The old ancestor of the Wang family was fast. However, Lin Yu was even faster with the world's end near at hand. The old ancestor of the Wang family had just appeared when he was cut in half by Lin Yu. Before his body could recover, Lin Yu's burial ice appeared and froze him. He turned into two and fell to the ground. Chapter 1354. Lin Yu's body fell rapidly, and the Wang family ancestor's body was crushed into powder. The entire ancient city was completely silent. Everyone stared blankly at this scene. The shock in their hearts had undoubtedly increased. What they saw today was like killing a god. It was too terrifying. An early-stage Dao channeling realm cultivator could fight two peak Dao channeling realm experts alone. Now, the space of the heaven refining flask was slowly opening. Lin Yu looked at everyone present. The old man who had been standing with Wang Tianjun was now hiding in the crowd. Lin Yu didn't want to continue killing. Now that the first emperor had recovered, the parasites in the ancient city would naturally be eliminated. There was no point for him to stay here. He slowly walked up to Lin Li and said, "Elder Lin, are you willing to leave with me?" He was ready to leave. There was nothing left in the ancient city that was worth staying for. Lin Li looked at Lin Yu with gratification and said, "I want to see how far you can grow." Wang Chuan walked out with a determined look on his face and said, "The Wang family and you are irreconcilable. Today, I, Wang Chuan, will ask for your advice." Some people couldn't bear to see Lin use battle prowess clearly. If Wang Chuan stepped forward now, it would be no different from sending himself to death. Lin Yu turned around and said, "With your current strength, you are no longer worthy of me taking action." With that, Lin Yu and Lin Li walked out of the ancient city together. In the secret place, a majestic palace shrunk to the size of a palm and entered Lin Li's sleeve. This was something that Lin Xian had left behind. Now that Lin Li and Wang Chuan were leaving, they naturally had to take it with them. No one stopped Lin Yu and Wang Chuan from leaving. Now, as long as the first emperor didn't say anything, no one dared to stop them. Bao Jiaming stepped forward and said, "Brother Lin, what do you think of me going with you?" "Of course you are welcome," Lin Yu said. After bidding farewell to Fu Lingyun, Bao Jiaming followed Lin Yu out of the city gate. Everyone watched as Lin Yu and the others left. At the same time, the Azure Universe Pavilion's patriarch sighed. Lin Yu's talent was obvious to all. Gu Cheng had given up on him. Not long from now, the entire ancient city might find out that an utmost being was about to be born within the heaven and earth. Along the way, Bao Jiaming was quite lively. He would go up to Lin Li and try to get closer to him. "Brother Lin, what are we going to do? Are we going to kill our way into the ancestral land of the strange creatures?" Bao Jiaming asked excitedly, his heart filled with hope. "The ancestral lands aren't something you can imagine." Lin Li shook his head. "I've already rescued the supreme bloodline that was being kept in captivity in the land of the strange races and built the imperial city. Now let's head there," Lin Yu said. Right now, he was building up the true imperial pass. Even if Gu Cheng didn't do anything, he could still lead the people of Imperial Pass to fight against the strange races. Did anything happen when you went to the land of the strange races? This was the question that Lin Li was concerned about. At the same time, Bao Jiaming was curious as well. After all, the strange races were unimaginably strong. Even though Lin Yu had once displayed his supreme strength in Gu Cheng, he still couldn't do anything about it. However, the foundation of the strange races was extremely terrifying. Lin Yu had even touched the ancestral land of the strange races. And now, he had returned safely. Not only that, his strength had also improved tremendously, breaking through to the Tao induction state. Within the mysterious race, there is an utmost being who has endured the infamy of the ancient times. He was the one who saved me, and even handed over the inheritance left behind by our ancestors to me. Lin Yu looked in the direction of the mysterious race and sighed. There was a sense of loss in his eyes. Right now, the utmost being of the star was about to fall into darkness completely. Right now, all the living beings of the origin grounds were cursing at the traitors in their hearts. Are you talking about the utmost being of the star world? Bao Jiaming asked. After all, the utmost being of the star world wasn't the only one who had joined the strange races back then. However, the strongest among them was undoubtedly the utmost being of the star world. Bao Jiaming's background wasn't simple. Naturally, he knew a little about it. Lin Yu nodded his head. Right now, only he knew that the utmost being of the star world hadn't betrayed them. Instead, he was hiding within the strange races, waiting for an opportunity to make his move. He was trying to figure out the background and foundation of the strange races. However, I think that it won't be long before the strange races come out and start their expedition for real. Linley's heart was filled with worry. Not long ago, the Azure King and King Yu had already awakened and came to the ancient city. By the time they recovered their strength, everything would be over. After all, in the ancient city and even the entire origin grounds, there was only one utmost being, the founding emperor. The strange races shouldn't start their expedition in the near future. The date of the final battle will be delayed by a lot. Lin Yu said, "What?" Bao Jianming didn't understand. 2,000 years ago, the overlords of the strange races had already entered the ancient city. Now that he heard Lin Yu's words, even Linley's eyes were filled with doubt. The Azure King was severely injured by me and almost died. Now that the strange race's ancestral grounds have awakened ahead of time, King Yu can't free himself. Lin Yu said slowly. However, when these words reached Bao Jianming's ears, his mouth opened into an O shape. The shock in his heart couldn't be any greater. What other tricks do you have? Bao Jianming felt his mouth go dry and couldn't help but ask. Lin Yu shook his head and said, the ancestors of the past had already predicted what would happen in the future. Outside the strange race's ancestral grounds, they left behind some tricks to strengthen my body. That's why I was able to possess that kind of combat strength for a short period of time. When Linley heard about Lin Xian's tricks, his eyes revealed a hint of surprise. When he returned to the ancient city, he had almost used all his tricks to flip the entire ancient city. The God King truly is omnipotent. He had already predicted everything. Linley nodded and said, even though the God King has passed away countless years ago, he can still cause the strange races to tremble in fear. This was a powerful surge of self-confidence. Lin Xian's invincible figure had been imprinted in Linley's mind long ago. However, when he heard Lin Yu talk about the strange race's ancestral grounds awakening ahead of time, he couldn't help but ask. However, Lin Yu didn't know about this. Perhaps because of my appearance, or perhaps because of the ancestors' aura, the strange race's ancestral grounds sensed something ahead of time and awakened ahead of time. This was what Lin Yu was worried about. Although they had obtained a short period of peace, an even greater storm was about to descend. Because of the strange race's ancestral grounds awakening, the sovereigns who had been lying dormant within the ancestral grounds and had participated in the ancient war would definitely awaken ahead of time. When that time came, how would the creatures of the universe resist? This was a worrisome point. However, right now, Lin Yu didn't reveal any signs of panic. Right now, the most important thing was to quickly raise his own level of insight. Only then would he be able to slaughter his way out of the end war and bring about true peace for all ages. Lin Yu had this sort of self-confidence. A month later, the three of them returned to the imperial city. Looking at the majestic imperial city, Bao Jianming couldn't help but sigh in praise. The people here, because they had come to the Genesis lands, were no longer suppressed by the natural laws of the universe. Their power had improved very quickly. In particular, Lin Yin, who had the potential to become a saint, had already reached the God King level. Within his polychoria, it was as though the heavens and the earth were being split apart, and the stars were being nurtured within them. Chapter 1355. Seeing that Lin Yu had returned, everyone came to the gates of the imperial city. They waited respectfully for Lin Yu and the others to enter the imperial city. Bao Jiaming looked at all the living beings with powerful bloodlines, and his face was filled with shock. However, he had heard Lin Yu mention that these were the bloodlines of the utmost beings who had been raised in captivity by the strange race. He could not help but feel pity in his eyes. At the same time, looking at these numb living beings, his eyes were filled with rage. Linley looked at the black-robed Lin Yin in front of him, and his eyes narrowed. He could tell how terrifying Lin Yin's talent was. How about I hand Lin Yin over to you to teach in the future? Lin Yu said. As the number one person below the utmost beings, Linley definitely had the qualifications. And because Lin Yu needed to break through as soon as possible, he did not have the time to teach his disciple Lin Yin. He might as well be a hands-off boss. Naturally, there's no problem. Linley said slowly, "Are you willing to let me teach you cultivation?" He looked at Lin Yin, who was standing by the side. With the guidance of a senior, this junior could not ask for anything more. Lin Yin knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times. Because Lin Yin had suffered endless torment when he was young, his heart had not been twisted. On the contrary, his heart was so resolute that even Lin Yu was slightly moved when he first started teaching him. The path of cultivation did not depend only on one's talent. One's heart was extremely important as well. Right now, Lin Yin was satisfied. As long as he was guided, he would definitely become a major figure in the origin grounds in the future. I know, this is the bloodline of the former human emperor. Now, there's an atavism. Linley said. However, there was a hint of pity in his eyes. He thought of the human emperor of the past. He was invincible, but in the end, even his own bloodline was captured and raised by the strange race. They were even worse than livestock. I will recreate the glory of my ancestor and slaughter my way into the strange race. Lin Yin's eyes were filled with endless hatred. His younger sister was casually killed by the strange race. Even her corpse was buried in the depths of the abyss, never to see the light of day. The strange race had an irreconcilable enmity with all the living beings in the universe. Lin Yin was only a small part of it. However, it had also become a scar in his heart that could not be erased. This was the motivation for his continuous cultivation. He hoped that one day he would be able to regain the might of his ancestor and slaughter his way into the strange race to personally kill the murderer of his younger sister. The hatred in your heart is the motivation to move forward. Linley rubbed Lin Yin's head as he slowly said. He could foresee how much pain Lin Yin had suffered since he was born. Even before he was a month old, his own mother had been killed, and not even her corpse had been left behind. The crimes that the strange creatures had committed against these supreme bloodlines were too numerous to be recorded. They entered the center of the imperial city. Now this place was gradually taking the shape of a city. There was a large area of empty space. With a wave of Linley's hand, the palace which Lin Xian had left behind all those years ago rumbled as it appeared in the center of the imperial city. Supreme Tao laws spread out, shrouding the entire imperial city. It was filled with the power of time and space, giving the ancient city a feeling of indestructibility. Lin Yin stared at the palace in front of him, his eyes hazy. Even his breathing couldn't help but quicken. If you train in the palace, you'll get twice the results with half the effort. In the future, you can all enter. Linley said. The flow of time in the palace was far slower than in the outside world. Even the Genesis lands would find it hard to affect it. This was the fundamental reason why the imperial city had risen so quickly. This is the item I found for you in the past. Since you've already broken through to the Tao realm, perhaps you can borrow this item to increase your power by another level. Linley took out a decaying jade box, which glowed with light and carried with it a dense medicinal fragrance. It was so fragrant that just by smelling it, one would feel as though they were about to ascend to immortality. Lin Yu didn't refuse. He accepted the jade box. What he lacked right now was a divine item that could help him break through quickly. But after reaching the Tao realm, there were virtually no divine items in the world that could help him break through. Even in the land of origin, this kind of creation was extremely lacking. Bao Jiaming, you're about to break through as well. In the past, forefather Lin Xian acquired several flawless Tao seeds. See if you can get them. Lin Li said slowly. Right now, Bao Jiaming was at the peak of the original God realm. If he wanted to reach the flawless realm, the safest way was to fuse with the Tao seeds. Tao seeds were seeds that had been nurtured in the primordial era of the world. They were the seeds of various supreme Tao principles. They contain a type of flawless grand Tao. Every single grand Tao could create a major world and could be used as a substitute for the heavenly Tao. Bao Jiaming was overjoyed. Thank you, Senior. Right now, the Imperial City is weak. These are all of the supreme bloodlines of the past. Their talent is terrifying. Let them all enter the palace and train for a period of time. Lin Li said. Amongst them was Lin Yu. Within the jade box, there was a single pill, the Tao origin pill. The pill had been formed before ancient history. Even now, it still had terrifying medicinal effects. Lin Li informed them. He personally stood guard outside the palace. Everyone, including Lin Yu, entered the palace. However, as soon as they stepped in, some people couldn't take it and almost knelt on the ground. The pressure was too terrifying. This was the aura of the supreme Lin Xian of the past. Many people found it hard to get used to it. The flow of time here was 100 times slower. The traces of the Grand Tao here were even more mysterious than the secret training grounds that Lin Yu had left behind in the 12 universes. There were no flaws here at all. Lin Yu closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then he muttered, "It seems that the secret training grounds in the 12 universes need to be modified. Those with low cultivation bases can cultivate in the main palace." Lin Yu said, "The aura suppression here was too terrifying. Those with low cultivation bases couldn't advance at all." Lin Yu said, "Among the 100+ people, more than half of them sat down cross-legged on the ground and began to practice their cultivation techniques. The supreme cultivation techniques had been deeply imprinted into their bloodlines. Now that they had awakened, they could completely control them. This was also one of the most important reasons why the strange race kept them captive. They wanted to analyze all the mysteries of the supreme cultivation techniques from them." Lin Yin finally stopped in the depths of the main palace. Lin Yu, Bao Jiaming, and the old man entered the depths. Bao Jiaming arrived at the side palace where the Tao seed was stored. The Tao patterns on the old man's body intertwined, and he also went to a cultivation ground. Lin Yu looked at the majestic palace. Finally, he stopped in a secret training room. He held a jade box in his hand. It contained the fluctuations of life. A pill of this level already had its own consciousness. It had become a type of life form. As Lin Yu opened the jade box, the pill broke through the restrictions and rampaged in the secret room. The sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard. The entire secret room was already covered by a glow. The thick medicinal fragrance turned into a solid substance, forming a dense mist. Just a sniff would make one feel comfortable. It was as though they were about to ascend to immortality. A small golden dragon appeared. At this moment, it was roaring, wanting to break through the restrictions and escape. Lin Yu had long been prepared. The space-time Tao law appeared, intertwining into a huge net that enveloped the pill. Chapter 1356. To Lin Yu's surprise, the little golden dragon broke through Lin Yu's Tao law net. After countless years of precipitation, the medicinal efficacy of the Tao source pill had not dissipated, but had become even more intense. Lin Yu flexed his fingers, and the power of the space-time Tao law increased a little, once again imprisoning the Tao source pill that had broken free. If Lin Yu had not broken through to the Tao induction realm, he might not have been able to imprison the little golden dragon and could only let it escape. At this time, Lin Yu exerted more force in his hand, and the little golden dragon reversed. After seeing that the breakthrough was fruitless, it wanted to attack Lin Yu. However, its attack method was also strange. It directly spat out saliva from its mouth and shot it at Lin Yu. Lin Yu was now in the Tao induction realm, so he could easily resolve the little golden dragon's attack. With a wave of his hand, the saliva was suspended in the air. Then, with a stretch of his hand, the little golden dragon appeared in Lin Yu's hand. At this time, the little golden dragon was still resisting, constantly spitting saliva from its mouth. It contained pure medicinal efficacy. Lin Yu did not waste it, and directly collected it in a jade bottle. After all, it was something that had been broken down from the Tao Source pill, and the medicinal efficacy was terrifying. It would have unimaginable magical effects if left to some people. After collecting 3 bottles, the little golden dragon was already dispirited. No matter how it struggled, it could not escape from Lin Yu's hand. Bang! In the end, its body dispersed and turned into a round and simple pill. There were pill patterns intertwined on it, like an extremely beautiful painting between heaven and earth. Although it was subtle, the patterns of birds and beasts were clearly visible. Even now, the pill was still warm. It contained the primordial Tao laws and pure energy. Lin Yu just looked at it indifferently. After settling his power, he did not hesitate and swallowed the pill in one bite. The pill directly turned into liquid and flowed into Lin Yu's limbs and bones. He operated the technique, and at the same time his inner world moved. The pure medicinal efficacy was transported to his limbs and bones. It was a small pill, but it contained a vast amount of energy. Soon, Lin Yu's body exploded. There seemed to be some kind of mysterious power that was constantly transforming Lin Yu's body. At the same time, his inner world was constantly expanding and undergoing some kind of profound change. 20 years passed like this. When Lin Yu had absorbed the universe fire and burial ice, he was already at the peak of the early stage of Tao realm. In the past 20 years, he had been consolidating his body and sending the excess medicinal power into his inner world. His inner world had grown to a critical point. Lin Yu knew that it was time for a breakthrough. Chaos gradually appeared on his body. In his slightly closed eyes, the mysterious symbols that condensed universe fire and burial ice appeared. He was surrounded by lightning. Inside the secret chamber, it was as if the world was being recreated. Thousands of stars revolved around Lin Yu. The phenomenon lasted for 100 years. An even more powerful force emerged from Lin Yu's body. Like water flowing through a canal, Lin Yu broke through to the middle stage of the Tao realm. He could sense the dormant power in his body. He murmured, "If I encounter Wang Tianjun now, even without using universe fire and burial ice, I'll be able to kill him." Lin Yu was extremely confident in his own strength, especially after experiencing Wang Tianjun, who had been at the peak of the Tao realm for countless years. He was even more certain that his current strength was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with such an expert, and perhaps even kill him. Lin Yu calmed himself down and consolidated for a period of time. Then, he walked out of the main hall. Because of the flow of time in the main hall, only a year had passed in the outside world. Lin Yu was currently seated in the lotus position in front of the main hall. He was like an old tree, quiet and peaceful. He had already experienced countless years, and his state of mind was no longer affected by anything. Lin Yu arrived in front of him. Only a few people had left the main hall. Because of his current level of cultivation, it wasn't suitable for him to train for long periods of time. "You've come out." Lin Yu could sense that Lin Yu was now at the middle stage of the Tao realm. He nodded. During the 2 years he had been by Lin Yu's side, the two of them had discussed many things regarding the current state of the 12 universes. He knew now as well. In the past, his royal father, the old God King, wasn't actually a person of that era. Rather, he was Lin Xian's great-grandson, who had been sent to that era through the River of Time. Lin Xian's lineage had all perished in the Great War of ancient history. The old God King had passed through the River of Time, and his body had been shackled as well. Later on, the six-winged God King had ambushed him, causing him to perish before reaching the progenitor level. Tens of thousands of years had passed since then. Now that he thought about it, Lin Yu's heart was still filled with guilt. If it hadn't been for the fact that he had been too weak in the past, the six-winged God King wouldn't have been able to succeed and rule over the 12 universes for so many years. Elder Lin, I am preparing to go to the ancient city established in the first universe to meet an old friend. Lin Yu rose to his feet as he spoke to Linley. He had been in the land of origin for thousands of years. And in the land of origin, there was only one old friend, Ancestor Lu. Now, he didn't know how Ancestor Lu was doing. Now that he had broken through to the middle stage of the Dao realm, it was a good thing for him to sense the different Daos of the world. It would be helpful for his future breakthroughs. The strange race wouldn't invade in the short term. The current imperial city was relatively safe. Therefore, Lin Yu was preparing to go to the edge of the realm's sea, to the ancient city established in the first universe. According to Linley. Now, the ancient city established in the first universe had supreme existences, and there was more than one of them. They were even more powerful than the ancient city. However, they seemed to be suppressing something else, so they couldn't leave. This was what Lin Yu wanted to know, because as far as he knew, most of the powerhouses of the heavenly court in the past had entered the land of origin. As forgers, they had always been searching for something. Now, the strange race had appeared. Lin Yu couldn't help but guess what the powerhouses of the first universe were searching for. Why were they called forgers? This was a secret. Even Linley didn't know much about it. The ancient city established in the first universe was also known as the Immortal Pass. Its establishment had a great connection with the supreme existences. As for the secrets within, Lin Yu needed to understand it personally. This was to make sufficient preparations to fight against the strange race in the future. Lin Yu left the imperial city, and the map that Linley gave him appeared in his hand. He headed east, passing through the endless, boundless land. The scenery here was the same. They were all destroyed in the Great War, and only a few stubborn plants remained. However, after being nurtured by the passage of time, they had become incomparably mysterious. He didn't know how long he had walked. Lin Yu stopped where he was. A thunderstruck wood in front of him attracted his attention. Although this thunderstruck wood was only left with a stump, there were still signs of life. It didn't seem to have died and was still stubbornly surviving. On the charred stump, crystal clear liquid was flowing down continuously, carrying with it a thick aura of life. This was definitely a supreme substance that could revive the dead. Lin Yu walked up to the thunderstruck wood. This thunderstruck wood was just a stump. It was so big that hundreds of people couldn't even wrap their arms around it. It was just like a gigantic platform. Even now, there were still wisps of green smoke coming from it. Lin Yu came to the side and saw a sparkling green. At this moment, the thunderstruck wood was reborn, and a green sprout had already sprouted. No, it's a consciousness. Lin Yu seemed to be able to sense the weak consciousness of the thunderstruck wood. Back then, this ancient tree had already developed sentience. Right now, it was just like a newborn baby that was still recuperating. Chapter 1357. At this moment, Lin Yu's consciousness was attached to the thunderstruck wood. Suddenly, a familiar feeling surged into his heart. This is the aura of the ancient Pot Demon King. Lin Yu could sense that this seemed to be the remnant of the ancient Pot Demon King. Wasn't this a little too much of a coincidence? To think that he would bump into the remnant of the ancient Pot Demon King on the way to the 10 million Immortal Pass. However, one could imagine how devastating the battle back then must have been. Even the ancient Pot Demon King had met with a calamity, with a section of his body left behind here. At this moment, Lin Yu recalled the words of Bai Xiaoli. The battlefield of the 10 great demon kings back then wasn't with the utmost beings. Instead, it was somewhere else, through the immortal pass established in the first universe. Those who came before could roughly guess that the powerful beings of the first universe were suppressing the place where the 10 great demon kings fought back then. Since he had bumped into the remnant of the ancient Pot Demon King here, he must not be too far away from the immortal pass. You have an aura that I'm familiar with. At this moment, the thunderstruck would send out his consciousness once more. This time around, Lin Yu heard it clearly. Through the consciousness of the thunderstruck wood, Lin Yu was even more certain that this thunderstruck wood was a part of the ancient pot demon king's body back then. However, the thunderstruck wood was almost done with its metamorphosis. Before long, it would grow into a whole new body and become a demon. Are you willing to enter my heaven and earth? Lin Yu sent out his consciousness as well. The energy here was thin, and there was a lack of living matter. If he were to stay here, the time it would take for the thunderstruck wood to metamorphose would be greatly increased. A surge of energy was transmitted to the thunderstruck wood. This pure energy carried with it the aura of Lin Yu's 3 lifetime Dao fruit. After a long time, only then did the thunderstruck would send out his consciousness once more. All right. Lin Yu nodded his head. He opened up his inner world, and the thunderstruck wood took the initiative to enter it. He did not go anywhere else. Instead, he entered the pure land of Lin Yu's present era Dao fruit and snuggled up to that ancient tree. Now, the thunderstruck wood was about to transform into a brand new individual. His aura was already different from that of the ancient pot demon king. If he was given enough time, he would definitely grow into a terrifying demon. Moreover, now that it was nestled under the ancient tree and was being influenced by the chanting of sutras, it began to transform and become even more mystical. The Tao laws on the thunderstruck were like tree roots that took root in Lin Yu's pure land. The place became spacious and empty. Lin Yu sat cross-legged in front of the thunderstruck wood. After a long time, because of the reverse nourishment, the strength in his body grew a bit stronger. Then, Lin Yu got up and continued walking. 5 years passed like this. Lin Yu witnessed many more miracles along the way. In fact, he even saw the corpse of an utmost being. However, it was just a tiny bit of it that remained. Finally, a grand city that stood under the sky appeared. It carried dense, immortal light, illuminating millions and millions of li, illuminating the world, giving this place a divine feeling. Under the illumination of the immortal light, Lin Yu's shadow was elongated. This journey took him close to 50 years. Most of the time, Lin Yu rushed with all his might because of the map. Otherwise, without an accurate path, Lin Yu did not know how long he would have to walk. He arrived at the Immortal Pass. Below, there were 2 malevolent-looking stone statues that were 10,000 feet tall. One of them held a sword while the other held an axe, exuding a powerful aura. Just the 2 stone statues guarding the gate already had the strength of a Tao-channeling realm cultivator. At this moment, the 2 stone statues sensed Lin Yu's aura. Their bell-like eyes emitted a golden light that shone on Lin Yu's body. The golden light had a mysterious power that could see through everything. Who are you? Tell me your name. The stone statues spoke. After years of nurturing, the stone statues had already gained sentience and could be considered as powerful beings. The words of the 2 stone statues were filled with anger as they questioned Lin Yu. I am the current divine king of the 12 universes. I'm here to see an old friend, Lin Yu said slowly as he looked at the 2 huge stone statues. At this time, someone in the immortal light had already sensed the movement outside the Immortal Pass. They came to the city wall. A mirror appeared above the city gates. It looked like ripples on the surface of the water. The figure of a white-robed old man appeared. He had the demeanor of an immortal, white hair, and a youthful face. There were flowing cloud patterns on his sleeves. Beside him was a green-robed figure with a long sword on his back. He had a slender figure, and his clothes fluttered in the wind. It was Ancestor Lu, who was heading to the origin place. This is my best friend. Don't worry. After seeing Lin Yu, Ancestor Lu was slightly surprised, but immediately smiled. The city gate of the Immortal Pass was wide open. The scene inside made one feel as if they were in a fairyland. The ground was shrouded in immortal mist, and auspicious beasts were crawling in it. Cranes danced in the sky. This seemed to be the real immortal world, with endless streams of light. Lin Yu stepped inside. Ancestor Lu rode the immortal sword and came to the city gate to personally welcome Lin Yu. Brother Lin, you're here. Ancestor Lu had a smile on his face. He didn't expect that Lin Yu would also come to the origin place, and the aura on his body made him unable to see through it. Brother Lu, long time no see. Lin Yu cupped his hands. Is this the young divine king of the 12 universes that you mentioned? The old man with the demeanor of an immortal also appeared in front of Lin Yu. Yes, Ancestor Lu said. The old man looked at Lin Yu with admiration in his eyes. The person who can be mentioned by Ancestor Lu so often is indeed not ordinary. This is Venerable Ming, who is now in charge of guarding the Immortal Pass. Ancestor Lu introduced. Greetings, Venerable Ming. Lin Yu cupped his hands. Venerable Ming smiled and said, No need to stand on ceremony. Since you're a friend of Ancestor Lu, you're a friend of mine. Venerable Ming didn't have the slightest arrogance of a city lord. Let's have a chat in the main hall, Venerable Ming said. As he waved his hand, 3 immortal cranes came in front of him. Venerable Ming took the lead and stepped on the back of the immortal crane, leading the way. Brother Lin, let's go. Today, we can finally get drunk. The people here don't drink, which makes me hungry, Ancestor Lu said with a smile. From Ancestor Lu's chaotic aura, it could be seen that the days here weren't easy. Okay, today, we won't go back until we're drunk. Lin Yu responded with a smile. Only when he saw an old friend, Lin Yu felt that the origin place was no longer so unfamiliar. The 3 rode the immortal crane and arrived above the clouds. The cinnabar walls, glazed tiles, and multicolored light revealed extraordinary. The supreme aura was revealed, making people feel respect. After getting off the immortal crane, the 3 entered the palace through the ladder. Now the Immortal Pass is almost empty. Many people are in seclusion. Now that there are only the 2 of us, I hope Brother Lin doesn't mind. Venerable Ming said. It's okay. Lin Yu shook his head. Chapter 1358. With a wave of his hand, food and wine appeared on the table. These were all immortal brews. The aroma of the wine filled the nostrils with a unique fragrance. The name of this wine is Heavenly Immortal Drunk. It is brewed from a type of flower harvested from the outskirts of the world sea. It can help one comprehend the Tao and extend one's lifespan. Ming Revered said. Evidently, he held Lin Yu in high regard. Right now, he was taking out his treasure collection. Lin Yu took up the wine cup and sniffed it before nodding his head and praising. Indeed, this is good wine. How long has it been since I've seen little brother Lin? Come, let's drink 3 cups first. Ancestor Lu poured the wine and chuckled. Lin Yu raised his cup in response. The 3 of them drank together. Little brother Lin, have you just arrived, or? Ming Revered asked. They could not see through Lin Yu's strength. If he could stay in the Immortal Pass, it would be of great help to the development of the Immortal Pass. I've been here for thousands of years. Lin Yu shook his head. Then, is little brother Lin in the ancient city right now? Ming Revered asked. Right now, other than the ancient city and the Immortal Pass, there were no other living beings in the origin grounds. Since Lin Yu had been here for thousands of years, he must have stayed in the ancient city for a long time. At the thought of this, Ming Revered's eyes let out a look of disappointment. I've only stayed there for a short period of time, Lin Yu replied. Right now, I've already left. Lin Yu did not elaborate on the various matters involved. Is that so? Ming Revered was deep in thought. However, he was not in a hurry to rope Lin Yu into the Immortal Pass. The 3 of them drank a few cups together. Right now, it was already dusk. Above the skies, a blurry moon appeared. Hanging in the east, it brought with it a hazy beauty. This was the moon that the utmost being had created back then. Tao laws emanated from it, revealing its extraordinariness. I wonder what cultivation state little brother Lin is at right now. Ming Revered was curious. That was because right now, there seemed to be a layer of mist shrouding Lin Yu's body. Even though Revered Ming was at the pinnacle of the Tao channeling state and was just a step away from being a half-step upmost being, he still could not see through Lin Yu's cultivation state. Even though he knew that Lin Yu's true cultivation level wasn't very high, Not long ago, I was lucky enough to break through to the middle stage of Tao induction, Lin Yu replied with a smile. Revered Ming didn't have any ill intentions. He was just chatting and laughing at the table, so Lin Yu didn't hide anything. However, even though he was only at the middle stage of the Dao realm, his combat strength could not be judged by his realm. Right now, he was at the pinnacle of the Dao channeling state. Even if it were a half step up most being, Lin Yu would still be able to take them on. The student surpasses the master. I've only broken through to the Dao induction realm not too long ago. I'm really ashamed. Ancestor Lu had a smile on his face. He was just mocking himself. He wasn't jealous at all because Lin Yu's current cultivation level had surpassed his own. Ancestor Lu's talent is amazing. In that universe with incomplete Dao laws, you've already broken through to the Ancestor realm. If it wasn't for the fact that your cultivation level dropped in the 10 square world, I'm afraid that I would be far behind you now, Lin Yu said seriously. Ancestor Lu was indeed someone with great talent that he had seen before. If it wasn't for the fact that he was injured by the previous Sacred Grounds formation in the 10 square world, his foundation would have been damaged. After 1,000,000 years, who knew what his current cultivation level would have been? Moreover, he was also the only person on Earth's immortal island who had mastered the ancient characters other than Lin Yu. This kind of talent was rarely seen since ancient times. Lin Yu wasn't surprised that he was able to reach the Dao induction realm so quickly. After all, he had encountered a lot of opportunities during his breakthrough. If it wasn't for the divine treasures left behind by First Ancestor, I might still be in the original God realm. I wouldn't know how to break through. Lin Yu smiled bitterly. He raised his wine cup and drank a mouthful. Back then, Lin Zhigao was indeed powerful. He could be said to be the #1 Zhigao in history. Revered Ming had stayed in the origin ground for countless years. Naturally, he wasn't affected by the River of Time and knew of Lin Xian's name. Now that he mentioned it, his eyes couldn't help but reveal a look of respect. Lin Yu sighed. He also knew how strong his first ancestor was back then. Furthermore, there was no need for him to pass away. It was just that he chose to kill his way into the strange ancestral ground for the sake of opening a path of survival for the later generations. Using his life as the price, he left behind many methods. Given the personality of his first ancestor, he must have left behind some unimaginable methods in the final battle. Come, let's toast to Lin Zhigao. Revered Ming raised his wine cup with respect. The past is the past. We should look at the present now. However, we can't forget the contributions of our predecessors. Ancestor Lu said. At this moment, they didn't try to suppress the alcohol in their bodies. They were all tipsy. Why don't we toast to the martyrs who passed away in the battle back then? Lin Yu followed Ancestor Lu's words and said slowly. That's good. The three of them stood up together. They poured the wine in their cups onto the ground slowly. They then poured a cup for themselves and raised it before downing it in a single gulp. After a moment, the three of them sat down. Given little brother Lin's potential, it's not impossible for you to recreate the glory of our ancestors. Revered Ming said. Ancestor Lu agreed with this as well. He had interacted with Lin Yu for a long time now. He had witnessed most of Lin Yu's progress. Ancestor Lu did not doubt Revered Ming's words in the slightest. Lin Yu's potential and temperament were way too strong. They had already surpassed everyone he had seen since the ancient times. Ancestor Lu thought back to the time when the Heavens Courts were still under the control of the demon race. In the war between the three sects, the #1 of the 3 generations of the Chan sect was. Most likely, Lin Yu wasn't any weaker than him right now. However, the #1 of the 3 generations had already gone to the Realm C. There was no news of him, and no one knew how long he would take to return. You two flatter me. Lin Yu shook his head and said, There's no need to be humble. We're just telling the truth. Revered Ming and Ancestor Lu were best friends. It was just that they had come to the immortal pass many years ago. In the Heavens Courts, only Ancestor Lu and Celestial Venerable Hao were guarding it. Currently, most of the people in the immortal pass were in seclusion. As for the others, they had already stepped into unknown parts of the Realm C. There was no news of them, and even the soul lamps they left behind were flickering. No one knew if they were dead or alive. I wonder what the immortal pass is guarding. Lin Yu asked. This was a question that had troubled him for a long time, because the ancient city was fighting against the strange race. As for the immortal pass established in the first universe of the future, it was at the edge of the realm sea. It shouldn't be because of this. Avicania, revered Ming sighed. I can only tell you that it's related to the battle of the 10 great demon kings in the past. Ancestor Lu said. This was the result he had deduced after traveling through the 10 great sacred grounds and combining ancient books. In the end, he obtained confirmation from Bai Xiaoli. This was also the reason why Ancestor Lu insisted on walking the ancient path of the realm sea alone and came to the immortal pass. It was to tell the person who came before him this secret. Lin Yu nodded. This wasn't far from his guess. Back then, the 10 great demon kings and the supremes weren't on the same battlefield. However, in the end, the 10 great demon kings were sealed and the supremes died. Their fates were all tragic. Without exception, they were all fighting against something. The supremes were fighting against the strange race. As for the 10 great demon kings, it was unknown. In the realm sea, there are still unimaginable opponents. Lin Yu frowned slightly. He realized that the enemies they had to face in the current world were not only the strange race, but also others. Moreover, this secret was absolutely unimaginable. Back in the days, the 10 great demon kings were invincible, but they were all sealed. If it wasn't for Lin Yu, some of the demon kings might have been refined to death in the seal. Chapter 1359. However, it wasn't that there was no hope. The 10 demon kings had broken the seal and were now recuperating. Once they fully recovered, they would be a powerful force for the universe and the 10 sacred grounds. Lin Yu told him the fact that the 10 great monster kings had escaped. Ancestor Lu and venerated Ming were both shocked. The 10 great demon kings have escaped. Lin Yu nodded and said, with the help of Demon King Bai Xiaoli and I, the demon kings have all broken through the seal. However, because they have been sealed for too long, they are now very weak. It will take some time for them to recover to their peak. After all, the 10 great monster kings had almost been killed in the seal back then. Fortunately, the 10 demon kings had great cultivation. Although they paid a great price, they still destroyed a lot of the seal in the end. When the 10 demon kings entered the land of origin, there might be hope for the final battle. Ancestor Lu knew that Lin Yu had the jar with him. This artifact carried endless mysteries. Breaking the seal of the 10 demon kings might not be a problem. If the 10 demon kings break free, there might be hope for the disaster in the land of origin. Venerable Ming sighed. Because of suppressing this place, many people in the first universe had died. The three drank for a long time. However, after knowing that the 10 demon kings had broken free, Venerable Ming had some worries in his heart. Long ago, the 10 demon kings didn't have a good relationship with the beings of the universe. There were even many wars. Now that the supreme beings of the universe were gone, if the 10 demon kings wanted to destroy the 12 universes, who would be able to stop them? This was a huge problem. However, Lin Yu signaled for them to be at ease. Although the 10 demon kings were close to demons, as invincible experts, they had their own way of doing things. Lin Yu saved them. Naturally, he wouldn't be a threat to the beings of the universe. Until the next morning, the sun rose. The sunlight shone on the clouds, making this place look even more sacred. The three walked out of the immortal pass. Riding the immortal crane, they went east and came to the border of the realm sea. Even though Lin Yu had traversed the realm sea for thousands of years, he still felt his heart palpitate when he saw the vast realm sea. Above realm sea, a single wave represented the burial of an era. A speck of dust represented a world containing endless mysteries. Without sufficient strength, no one could cross it. Now, we can see it from the land of origin. If Lin Yu didn't have those opportunities and good fortune, he might not have been able to reach the other side with his cultivation base at that time. That was because the aura here was too oppressive. Even a casual splash of water could cause a great world to shatter, turning it into fine powder that was difficult to repair. Right now, they were looking at a wooden bridge in front of them. Under the corrosion of Realm C's power, it was close to decaying, broken wooden planks everywhere. Although the bridge wasn't big, it felt like the backbone of heaven and earth. This bridge had been built by the beings of the first universe by cutting down the world tree. It was indestructible and had existed since time immemorial. But now, under the corrosion of the Realm C, it was already virtually about to be destroyed. The path ahead was boundless, unknown where it led to. Only the bridge head had a flame that burned eternally, illuminating the path ahead. This was the guiding light for those who came before. However, after endless time passed, it was already much dimmer, flickering, unknown when it would go out. One could see shattered bones everywhere not far out, as well as already pitch-black immortal blood. It was unknown what those who came before encountered on the ancient bridge. However, what could be deduced was that back then, for the sake of opening up this path, the first universe's people definitely suffered incomparably bitter losses. Not far out, there were even experts who were covered in blood. Even after so much time had passed, the blood and bones still didn't fade. I have guarded this place for who knows how long. My memory's already about to fade. Those who came before, when can they return? Or, tomorrow venerated heaven faced this ancient bridge, but he didn't have any confidence. Realm C carried endless great terror to begin with. Moreover, the path ahead was an unknown land. It was unknown what there was. Tomorrow venerated heaven had some understanding, but he never dared to mention it. He would even be contaminated by inauspiciousness. At this time, the origin flame appeared, imprinting the immortal Tao laws left behind on the ancient bridge into his body. Now, he already turned into human form, becoming a chubby little fatty. Ancestor Lu and tomorrow venerated heaven both looked towards the origin flame with curiosity. This is the first flame at the birth of heaven and earth, origin flame. Tomorrow venerated heaven recognized the origin flame, revealing shock. He knew many anecdotes. He knew what the origin flame represented. Now that he saw Lin Yu hold it, he couldn't help but sigh, saying, "Looks like little brother Lin really is the one chosen by heaven, actually obtaining such good luck." Tomorrow venerated heaven looked at the origin flame, his heart carrying hesitation. This caused the origin flame to be on guard, waving its chubby fist, as if warning tomorrow venerated heaven not to have any thoughts about it. Lin Yu flicked its head, making the origin flame grimace in pain, lying on Lin Yu's shoulder in dissatisfaction. Ancestor Lu and tomorrow venerated heaven looked at each other. They both knew some secrets about the origin flame, and it seemed to be of great use to them. But now that they saw Lin Yu holding it, their hearts were filled with hesitation. "Big brother Lu, what's the matter? Feel free to speak your mind." Lin Yu could tell of their hesitation and said directly. After sighing, Ancestor Lu said, "Seems like we're the ones who are being awkward. Indeed, there's a request. That is, could we borrow Brother Lin's origin flame for a period of time? Not long from now, I will make use of the power of the immortal past to break through the half-step utmost, being level, and enter the end of the bridge to pass on information for the predecessors. As for the origin flame, it can lead the way. Therefore, Big Brother Lu, when do you need it?" Lin Yu asked without hesitation. 1,000 years later, Ancestor Lu replied, "No problem. I'll wait here for 1,000 years." Lin Yu said. At this moment, the origin flame grumbled in dissatisfaction. "There are many Tao laws of immortals on the bridge that will be of great benefit to you," Lin Yu said to the origin flame. Right now, the origin flame was sentient and possessed its own consciousness. Lin Yu said to the origin flame, "When the time comes, you can just return to my side." Eventually, the origin flame agreed meekly. Even though he was the first flame born from the birth of the heaven and earth, his guts were extremely small. Therefore, he had been residing within Lin Yu's body the entire time. We won't take little brother Lin's things for free. The immortal past carries with it an utmost creation. Now that Ancestor Lu is going to forcefully break through that step, You can make use of the power of the immortal past to raise your cultivation state by yet another level. Revered Ming said with a stern face. Lin Yu did not reject it. They both knew the importance of the origin flame. When Lin Yu heard the request of the two of them, he did not say anything more and took out the origin flame immediately. This was a huge favor. Initially, the two of them had a feeling that even if they were to break through to the half-step utmost being level, the chances of survival upon entering the end of the bridge were extremely slim. But now that they had the origin flame, things were completely different. They could make use of the mysterious powers of the origin flame to guide the path ahead. The three of them returned to the immortal pass. The ancient bell that stood high up in the sky rang out, reverberating out in all directions. At this moment, all the living beings that were in seclusion had already awakened and came to the main hall. Earlier on, they had already discussed and decided to let Ancestor Lu enter. After all, he had traveled through the universe and the holy grounds and knew of many secrets. As such, he had a certain understanding of the path ahead. Chapter 1360. At this moment, a few powerful auras appeared, emanating immortal chi from their bodies. This was because the cultivation techniques of the first cosmos were different from those of the other cosmos. The first cosmos focused on immortal cultivation. Right now, each and every one of them was emanating an immortal light and a holy aura. Revered Ming, what's going on? At this moment, a middle-aged man appeared with his hands behind his back. His body was already shining with the glow of a half-step utmost being, as though he could break through at any moment. Tao laws emanated from his body, forming a dense radiance that caused the colors of the world to fade away. He was definitely a powerful living being. At this moment, a total of 5 people appeared. They were all powerful beings who were guarding the immortal pass. I would like to invite you guys to come out of your seclusion and protect Ancestor Lu. Make use of the power of the immortal pass to break through to half-step utmost being. Revered Ming said slowly. Haven't we already discussed this earlier on? Even if Ancestor Lu were to reach half-step utmost being, his chances of survival would be slim. This is no different from courting death. The man said. At this moment, he noticed Lin Yu by the side and could not help but frown. Lin Yu had a mysterious aura that prevented him from probing. This had him curious. Even though he was about to break through to half-step utmost being, he still could not find out what cultivation state Lin Yu was at. However, judging from the aura, he knew that Lin Yu did not originate from the first cosmos. This is the current godly king of the 12 cosmoses, Lin Yu. He's also a good friend of mine. Ancestor Lu introduced. He did not hide anything. Back then, Ancestor Lu was of the same cultivation state and status as these people. Even though his cultivation state had stagnated in the universe and was lagging behind, he still treated them as equals. So that's the case. I wonder what he's here for? The man frowned and asked coldly. This is a critical period. The mysterious race is about to retaliate. It's best for us to be on our guard. An old man in gray robes spoke up as well. Their words were not wrong. Now that this was a critical period, they should be on guard against the arrival of some strangers to prevent any accident from happening. Little friend, please don't take it to heart. You should know about the current origin grounds. Another old woman said. Lin Yu nodded his head. His state of mind naturally wouldn't be shaken by a few words. I can guarantee with my life that godly King Lin is fine, Patriarch Lu said directly. Ming Tianzuan explained, this time, I summoned all of you out of seclusion because of little brother Lin's arrival. Things have taken a turn for the better. What is it? The man asked. Although he knew that Lin Yu was shrouded in a layer of mystery, he could roughly sense that his cultivation level wasn't very high. Primordial flame. Little brother Lin Yu has a wisp of primordial flame on his body. Ming Tianzuan looked at Lin Yu and said slowly after obtaining his approval. What? Primordial flame? Origin? The old woman was clearly shocked. Everyone's expression became strange as they all looked at Lin Yu. They all had some understanding of the first flame that was born in this world. It was definitely a world-shocking divine object. Little friend, can you let's take a look? The old woman asked excitedly if there really was an origin flame. Patriarch Lu walked on the bridge and headed to an unknown place to pass on a smile. The chances were much higher. They were all experts in the first universe. Their purpose in coming to the Immortal Pass was to suppress the chaos in the Realm Sea. And now, Patriarch Lu carried a huge secret that needed to be passed on. This would be of great help to the predecessors in the first universe and might affect the entire situation. That was a reason why they were so agitated. As Lin Yu opened his hand, the origin flame appeared on Lin Yu's palm. At this moment, he felt very uncomfortable when he saw several people looking at him at the same time. He was a little timid and hid in Lin Yu's hair. It really is the origin flame. The old woman combined the records in the ancient books. Within the origin flame, there were now many supreme Tao laws that were smelted together. That aura was definitely not wrong. Unexpected. The man couldn't help but laugh. Little friend, you are the benefactor of our immortal pass. The man changed his indifference and cupped his hands towards Lin Yu, apologizing for his attitude just now. Lin Yu replied politely. He had always been the kind of person who would respect others tenfold if they respected him. The people in the Immortal Pass were obviously different from the people in the ancient cities. This was also one of the aspects that Lin Yu recognized. Little friend, you are an eternal friend of our first universe. The old woman also had a smile on her face. Everyone was overjoyed. They looked at the origin flame that stuck its head out and confirmed it. 15 minutes later, they were all seated in the main hall. They began to discuss the matter of Patriarch Lu's breakthrough. Clearly, there was danger in the breakthrough. Within the Immortal Pass, there were fortunes left behind by the utmost beings. Although it could help one to advance quickly, one needed to be able to withstand this terrifying power. And this power came from the first universe. Patriarch Lu's time in the origin ground was the shortest. He hadn't completely smelted the Tao laws of the origin ground, which allowed him to be compatible with this power to the greatest extent. Since that's the case, 3 years later, we will personally guard and help Patriarch Lu break through. The man made a decision. Breaking through required a long time. According to their deduction, it would take at least 1,000 years. It was a lonely process. Everyone retreated out of the main hall. Tomorrow, revered Lord arranged a place for Lin Yu to stay. It was only at this moment that the origin flame in Lin Yu's hair peeked out of his body. At this moment, he was jumping around on the table. It was only towards Lin Yu that he felt a sense of familiarity. Imprint down my past and future Tao fruits as well, Lin Yu said slowly. Back then, the origin flame had attempted to enter those two small worlds. However, he was obstructed. Now that Lin Yu had combined all of his inner worlds into one, the seals within were much smaller. He didn't know what dangers lay ahead. This was to allow the origin flame to grow stronger and ensure his safety. At the same time, in the process of guiding Patriarch Lu's path forward, it could play its greatest role and prevent Patriarch Lu from encountering too many dangers. The origin flame was overjoyed. Lin Yu was sitting cross-legged on his bed. Lin Yu opened up his inner world and absorbed the origin flame into it. Now, Lin Yu knew that the Tao law of his past life was karma. It was extremely mysterious. The origin flame couldn't completely refine it in a short period of time. However, as Lin Yu used his power to weaken the seals there, the origin flame rushed in. Like a fish returning to the sea, he was overjoyed and jumped up and down. However, the karma threads surged and calmed the origin flame instantly. He was imprinting the Tao law of this place. After an unknown period of time, the origin flame fell into a deep sleep and turned into an egg. There were many supreme Tao laws intertwining on it. He seemed to be undergoing an unimaginable transformation. After seeing that there were no accidents, Lin Yu didn't bother about it anymore. He probed for a long time in the Immortal Pass. During this time, tomorrow revered Lord learned that Lin Yu had built another imperial city in the origin ground. While feeling regretful, he took out a dermic artifact that was imprinted with seals by an utmost being of the first universe and gave it to Lin Yu. Chapter 1361. At the same time, revered Ming signed a contract with Lin Yu. The Emperor's City and the Immortal Pass were now in an alliance. For the sake of the future, they would fight together. This was the promise that the Immortal Pass had made to Lin Yu. 3 years passed by quickly. Within the Immortal Pass, immortal qi was surging. Above the clouds, an ancient altar appeared. The decorations on it were elegant and dignified, with auspicious beasts suppressing it. Right now, Ancestor Lu was already on the altar. The immortal sword hovered above his head, bringing with it a sharp intent. After a period of settling down, the time was up. Right now, he was prepared to borrow the power of the Immortal Pass to break through to the half-step utmost being state. The winds and clouds within the Immortal Pass were stirring. Several powerful beings appeared in all directions. Right now, they were all emitting powerful auras. They were all existences that were about to break through to the half-step utmost being state. In their eras, they were all incomparably powerful existences. Right now, their expressions were solemn. Ancestor Lu's breakthrough this time was of the utmost importance. They could not afford to be careless in the slightest. Their consciousness was attached to the ancient altar. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Ancestor Lu, are you ready? The man spoke up. Ancestor Lu, who was sitting cross-legged on the altar for 3 years, nodded his head gently. His entire being was filled with tranquility and peace. He looked into the distance of the world sea. His eyes were filled with indifference. Lin Yu was just outside the palace, watching from afar. Right now, he could not provide any substantial help. The man spread out his hands and quickly formed complicated hand seals. Rumble. It was as though the heavens were being split open. The clouds and mist in this place were all dissipating at this moment. The altar that was floating in the void was made entirely out of jade. On it, the Tao laws of the utmost being were carved. Right now, it was as though the first universe had appeared in the sky. The figure of that utmost being of the past was surrounded by 3,000 great Taos. Golden lotus petals were floating around him constantly. His entire being was calm and peaceful, as though he had already merged with the heavens Tao. His entire figure turned extremely blurry, as though he did not belong to the entire history. Lin Yu's gaze focused. Back when he was on Earth, he had some understanding of myths and legends. However, Lin Yu did not have any understanding of this utmost being. It was as though he did not appear in the records at all. Lin Yu stood quietly before the palace. He looked at the strange phenomenon happening not far away. The supreme, illusory figure descended from the heavens. It was quiet and peaceful. Not long after, it appeared above Patriarch Lu's head. Then, he stretched out a finger and tapped Ancestor Lu's forehead. Pop! Like a drop of water falling into a calm surface of water, Ancestor Lu's figure trembled slightly as boundless power began to pour into his body. The power of the entire Immortal Pass began to converge towards Patriarch Lu. His entire figure became hazy. Tens of thousands of Tao laws had been refined by Patriarch Lu's immortal sword and injected into his body. The entire Immortal Pass was enveloped by this phenomenon. The rules of Tao turned into a rain of light pouring down on the Immortal Pass. At this moment, Lin Yu's figure was also in the midst of the light rain, carrying with it a pure energy substance. This was especially true since they were outside the palace. The rain of light that gathered there was endless, causing the entire palace to be covered in a layer of mist. Within the rain of light, there was endless power and the power of Tao laws that could help a person advance quickly. It was especially useful for Tao induction cultivators. This was also the condition that Ming Ming had mentioned in exchange for borrowing the origin flame. Lin Yu closed his eyes. His inner world opened up to receive the endless rain of light. The power in his body was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was unknown how long had passed. Time continued to pass. Now that 100 years had passed, the phenomenon here still hadn't subsided. How difficult was it to break through to half-step supreme? Even with the support of the immortal pass, Patriarch Lu would still need to spend a long time. Take the man, for example. He had lived for millions of years, and his talent was terrifying. Coupled with the fortune of the origin ground, he was still at the peak of the Tao induction realm. Although he felt that he could break through at any time, he still needed a lot of time to truly take that step. The power of the Immortal Pass could only support one person to break through to half-step supreme. Right now, the man, including Ming Ming, was sitting cross-legged in the void, extremely far away from the altar. Their eyes were slightly closed, and their hands were stretched out in front of them. Endless power was added to the altar. It was to maintain the stability of the altar to the greatest extent. At this moment, Patriarch Lu's immortal sword was spinning in the sky, receiving the power that was coming down. His entire body was buried under the power. This was part of the Supreme's Tao fruit. Although it was only a small part, the power it contained was unimaginable. Just like that, 100 years had passed. Patriarch Lu's aura was gradually growing stronger. He had already reached the mid-stage of the Tao induction realm and was still in the process of growing stronger. Lin Yu was also bathing in the rain of light. The power in his body was gradually growing stronger. Under the strengthening of the thunderstruck wood, he had almost reached the mid-stage of the Tao induction realm. It had only been 300 years, but Lin Yu's cultivation base had almost increased by a whole level. If anyone knew about this, they would definitely be shocked. If this were to happen, who knew how many people would be shocked? If anyone knew, the power contained in the rain of light was no longer of much use to Lin Yu. However, Lin Yu was still receiving the rain of light into his body, fusing it into his inner world. In the blink of an eye, 500 years had passed. At this moment, Patriarch Lu's cultivation realm had already reached the pinnacle of the Tao induction realm. He had reached the most crucial stage. Everyone's faces were gradually turning solemn. At this moment, Lin Yu had also stopped receiving the rain of light into his body. He looked in the direction of Patriarch Lu with a worried expression. Although this was the Supreme's Tao fruit of the first universe, and there was no rejection, Patriarch Lu's cultivation realm was only at the early stage of the Tao induction realm. There was still a lack of comprehension and stability within. 100 years had passed. Patriarch Lu, who was in the midst of breaking through, frowned deeply. There were even signs of cracks appearing on his body. The power of the Tao fruit was way too strong. This won't do. The Supreme's Tao fruit has already surpassed the half-step Supreme. If this continues, Patriarch Lu won't be able to hold on. The man realized this problem. He said to the crowd, they had all thought that the Tao fruit left behind by the Supreme of the first universe back then was only at the half-step Supreme level. However, the Tao laws and comprehension of the Supreme of the first universe were simply way too strong. It had already surpassed the half-step Supreme level that they had expected. Right now, Patriarch Lu was in an extremely dangerous situation. If this continued, he might just die. We've still underestimated the power of the primordial chaos utmost beings. Revered Ming's face was grim. However, because they were supporting the sacrificial altar, they were almost completely drained. There was no way they could have any strength left to defend against this power. A terrifying shockwave surged out. The man and the others had fresh blood seeping out from the corners of their mouths. Right now, the power that existed within Patriarch Lu's body had already surpassed the half-step Supreme level. It was hard for anyone to defend against it. The man and the others were all suffering from the backlash. Take out the Supreme weapon. The man roared out. He stretched out his hand, and a mysterious weapon appeared in a secret ground in the Immortal Pass. There were Tao laws and wisdom intertwined on it. This was definitely a primordial god weapon. The few of them took out their remaining strength and channeled it into the primordial god weapon to suppress the power of this place. However, their strength right now was way too weak. It was hard for them to fully utilize the primordial god weapon. Lin Yu had also noticed this problem. He walked over to the side of the man. Let me do it. You guys maintain the stability of the sacrificial altar. Lin Yu said slowly, with your Tao induction, middle stage, cultivation. The man was worried. However, there was a problem with the sacrificial altar right now. If they didn't maintain it with all their might, there might be a huge problem. Chapter 1362. Everyone was in disbelief at this moment. This wasn't something to be trifled with. However, there was no other way. No problem, Lin Yu replied. A power that wasn't any weaker than the man's erupted from his body, causing the entire sky to tremble. The man's expression changed. Your strength. They didn't continue speaking. Then we'll have to trouble little brother Lin. Ming Tianzuan revealed a surprised expression. He didn't expect Lin Yu to be so powerful. It wasn't just Ming Tianzuan. Even the old lady and the others had a look of disbelief in their eyes. In the Tao induction realm, each realm represented a difference of heaven and earth. But now, Lin Yu had overturned their understanding. Now isn't the time to think about other things. The man didn't hesitate at all as he passed the right to wield the Grand Mist artifact to Lin Yu. At this moment, Lin Yu held the Grand Mist artifact. He injected all his strength into it. Even though he had used all the strength in his inner world, he felt as though he was being sucked dry. The Grand Mist artifact was too powerful. Only now did Lin Yu know how much strength was needed to wield the Grand Mist artifact. It wasn't something that the stone sword in his hand could compare to. However, Lin Yu had no problem using the Grand Mist artifact to suppress the half-step utmost being aura coming from Ancestor Lu's body. Seeing that Lin Yu had already started to exert his strength, the man and the others also used all their strength to activate the altar's power. The two forces supported Ancestor Lu's body at the same time, alleviating the cracks on his body. His body started to condense slowly. The aura on his body grew stronger. Lin Yu's forehead was already covered in sweat. It was obvious that it was still a little difficult for him to wield the Grand Mist artifact alone. Blood was already flowing out from the corner of his mouth, and his hair was white. He was using all his strength. Lin Yu looked as though he had aged tens of thousands of years. It was obvious that the consumption to wield the Grand Mist artifact wasn't low. Little friend, catch. At this moment, the man threw a pill to Lin Yu. It exuded a pure aura of life, and at the same time contained boundless power. This was definitely a precious pill. However, he couldn't allow anything to go wrong with the Grand Mist artifact suppression. Lin Yu took it and swallowed it in one gulp before nodding at the man. 300 years passed. A single pill could maintain Lin Yu's strength for 300 years, and the energy contained in it was extremely pure. It was likely to be on the same level as the Tao source pills Lin Yu had eaten before. At this moment, Ancestor Lu's body exuded a powerful aura. As he stood up, the altar below began to crack inch by inch, and finally it exploded. Everyone involuntarily retreated several thousand feet. Ancestor Lu's eyes turned into two resplendent, immortal swords, piercing through the clouds and reaching the eternal unknown. Even the Grand Mist artifact's power started to recede. All of them knew that after 1,000 years of cultivation, Patriarch Lu had already reached the legendary half-step utmost being. Thousands of Tao laws were prostrating at his feet. I've broken through. Revered Ming placed his hands behind his back and secretly heaved a sigh of relief, until the radiance in Ancestor Lu's eyes disappeared. The phenomenon of heaven and earth receded. Ancestor Lu came before everyone and cupped his fists in a serious manner, saying, "Thank you for protecting me." These 1,000 years of cultivation had consumed a lot of their energy. Ancestor Lu looked at Lin Yu and nodded slightly. The two of them had experienced many years together, and nothing needed to be said. This time, it's all thanks to you, little friend. Otherwise, my breakthrough might have been in danger. The old woman sighed. Everyone thanked Lin Yu. However, this time, Lin Yu had consumed a lot of energy as well. Even his inner world had become much dimmer. Everyone recuperated for a few months, using the Tao laws and power of the Immortal Pass to recover. Ancestor Lu had also used the power of a half-step upmost being to help them. Right now, his strength had already surpassed the scope of knowledge. Although the process of breaking through was fraught with danger, the benefits one could obtain were also enormous. They stayed for another 3 years. It was time for Ancestor Lu to step onto the bridge. The few of them came out of their seclusion to send him off. When they arrived at the shore of the world's sea, everyone's faces were grim. Lin Yu took out the origin flame. The origin flame turned into a pink baby, grabbing onto Lin Yu's hair with reluctance. Eventually, it leaped onto Ancestor Lu's shoulders. Ancestor Lu, even though you've broken through to half-step upmost being this time around, and there's nothing in this world that can restrict you, the path of the bridge is filled with endless mysteries. You must be careful. Revered Ming reminded. Ancestor Lu nodded. Time to go. He did not have any lingering thoughts. I don't know how long I'll be gone for. Little brother Lin, when I return, I'll look for you personally for a drink. Ancestor Lu said. The road ahead was vast. This might be the final farewell. However, Lin Yu and Ancestor Lu did not feel sad in their hearts. All right, big brother Lu. I'll wait for you. Lin Yu nodded in reply. At this time, Ancestor Lu slowly stepped onto the bridge and gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Lin Yu and the others returned to the Immortal Pass. A few days passed. Little friend, are you sure you don't want to stay for a few more days? The old lady urged. Revered Ming stood before the city gates as well. Why don't you bring everyone from the Emperor's city over to the Immortal Pass, little brother Lin? We'll line the streets to welcome you. That's right. The man nodded in agreement. Thank you for your kind intentions. However, the bloodline of the utmost being in the Emperor's city has a huge grudge against the mysterious race. There will definitely be a war in the future. Since this place is being suppressed, it's not convenient for me to stay for long. Lin Yu cupped his fists and said, even though the founding emperor was in the ancient city, there were still some who had betrayed him. If the mysterious race were to be suppressed one day, if the ancient city were to be destroyed, the Emperor's city will be the final fortress to stop the mysterious race from advancing into the universe. This was something that Revered Ming and the others knew about as well. Since Little Friend has made up his mind, it's not good for us to stay for long. If there's anything you need, just let us know. The old lady said with a serious expression. In the past 1,000 years, Lin Yu's contributions to the Immortal Pass were obvious to all. The people guarding the Immortal Pass had already taken Lin Yu as a true friend. After everything is settled, come to the 12 universes for a drink. Lin Yu smiled. Then he walked out of the city gates slowly. Everyone sent him off for a distance. It was only after Lin Yu said that they turned back. Lin Yu stepped on the way back. Now, he knew that the Immortal Pass was suppressing something else. This was undoubtedly a huge matter. Perhaps in the upcoming battle, the two forces would be separated, resulting in unimaginable results. On the way back, Lin Yu did not follow the original route. Instead, he deliberately explored some secret places. As a battlefield, there were some places that were not destroyed and maintained the original appearance of the place of origin. It was worth exploring. A sprawling mountain range appeared in front of him. It was like an immortal lying down, holding his head and taking a nap. There was a strange aura within. It did not seem to belong to the mysterious race or the living beings of the universe. Chapter 1363. Lin Yu hovered in the sky and looked down at the terrain. After confirming that there was no danger, he approached. From Lin Li's words, he had learned that the origin ground could possibly be the origin of all living beings. The history of its birth was even older than the universe itself. Who knew how vast its territory was? Even the utmost beings of the past did not have an accurate understanding of it. Within it, there was an endless amount of fortune and danger. Lin Yu arrived at the foot of the mountain. He looked up at the mountain range. Even though it looked ordinary, it was majestic. However, it gave off an extremely strange feeling. That was because he could see two streams of blood tears flowing down the face of the immortal. Now that Lin Yu was near, he could see that the two streams of blood tears were two streams of spring water. They were formed from the immortal's eyes and flowed down to the ground. This was the source of the strange feeling. Even the current Lin, you could vaguely sense a threat. However, he still came to the location of the spring water. Rather than calling it spring water, it was more like two gigantic waterfalls. However, they were almost dried up. Right now, there were only traces of water flowing down. They did not flow down to the ground. Instead, they reached the outline of the face and disappeared into the void. Lin Yu's eyes were filled with a dense radiance. After refining the universe fire and burial ice, his eyes could see through all illusions. This was especially the case with the support of one of the ancient characters. Everything in the world could hardly hide from him. Lin Yu's gaze entered the void. There was a space where the blood tears had disappeared. However, it was hidden. If not for the fact that Lin Yu had a pair of eyes that could see through everything, he would not have discovered it. Lin Yu came to the place where the blood tears had disappeared. He was not tainted by the blood tears. The blood tears were way too strange. Even when he was near, Lin Yu felt a chill run down his spine. If I were to collect this substance, would I be able to use it to kill my enemies? Lin Yu asked. He used the earthenware jar to collect a few cubic meters of the materials in the area. After that, he used the clay jar to protect himself and the stone sword to open up the space. In the boundless space, there was a sea of blood with rocks floating in it. The center appeared before Lin Yu's eyes. He didn't know what it contained. Lin Yu stepped on the floating rocks and slowly approached the center. Lin Yu's body was protected by the clay pot, so the strange aura here couldn't get close to him. It was expelled 30 meters away from him. After spending 3 days, Lin Yu finally arrived at the center of the city. This was a stone platform that was reddish-brown in color. There seemed to be fluctuations of life within it, and it was still in the midst of transformation. A creature nurtured by the stone. Lin Yu stared at the origin source within the stone. Although the stone had been nurtured in the strange sea of blood, it did not seem to have been contaminated. Instead, it had a holy aura. Lin Yu split the stone with his sword, revealing the scene inside. One of them was a fist-sized stone figurine that was curled up. The moment Lin Yu split open the stone spirit had already sensed it, and a terrifying killing intent attacked. Lin Yu blocked it with the stone sword. Boom! The sea of blood shook. They formed terrifying ripples. The stone spirit's eyes were filled with endless killing intent, and they were blood-red. Strange and holy coexisted. Killing intent surged. However, the stone spirit hadn't been born yet, so it couldn't cause any substantial harm to Lin Yu. In the end, under the suppression of Lin Yu's divine will, its true spirit was directly obliterated. Around the rock spirit's body, there was also that sacred liquid, which contained a mystery. The liquid could allow the stone spirit to complete its transformation. It was definitely an incredible substance. Through the analysis of Lin Yu's eyes, the substance that contained the transformation could baptize a person. My child should be useful. Lin Yu thought of his child with the jade pure goddess. By now, he should already be one of the strongest in the universe. However, the Tao law in the universe was incomplete. This liquid that contained the stone spirit could be used to baptize the body. Lin Yu put away the stone spirit liquid. He saw the stone skin that wrapped the stone spirit. It seemed to have the same aura as a stone sword. It could be repaired. Lin Yu peeled off the stone skin. The stone sword vibrated and repaired the stone skin. Now, the stone sword was almost completely restored, emitting a heart-palpitating power. Lin Yu spent some time refining the stone spirit into a puppet and placed it in his inner world. Although the stone spirit hadn't been completely born, it already had the strength of the mid-stage Tao channeling realm. This kind of terrifying power was very shocking. After leaving this space, Lin Yu felt a special feeling from the stone spirit. He entered the mountain range. Lin Yu broke through the mountain range, and there was a huge cave inside. In other words, the entire mountain range here was hollow. There were many stone eggs in it. They seemed to belong to the stone spirit, but their grade wasn't as high as the stone spirit in the space. Lin Yu didn't hesitate and put all the stone eggs here into his inner space, controlling them with his divine thought. If they were born, they would be a powerful force. Each one of them probably had the strength of the ancestor realm. The stone eggs surrounded the stone spirit puppet, and a part of its power was absorbed by the puppet. Lin Yu then found a magical point. After the stone spirit was born and came into contact with the Tao law, it could cultivate on its own. The power in its body was really growing. The origin place is really mysterious. Lin Yu sighed. The creatures nurtured in the origin place were very magical. Now that they were refined into puppets by Lin Yu, they would definitely become a powerful force in the future. Moreover, the stone spirit was nurtured by heaven and earth and was naturally close to the great Tao. Naturally, its cultivation speed was also very shocking. After doing all this, Lin Yu left the mountain range. It took 200 years to return. During this time, Lin Yu explored many secret places and obtained many opportunities. However, most of them were no longer of much use to him now. They could be used as the foundation for the development of the imperial city. Especially in the time after, Lin Yu obtained a small stone sword through the stone spirit puppet in another mountain range. It was intertwined with the great Tao and had the same effect as his stone sword. It was already infinitely close to a supreme weapon. Lin Yu paid a certain price to obtain it. He returned to the imperial city. Nearly 1,500 years. Lin Yin had already broken through to the peak of the ancestor realm. Now, his body was exuding power, and his eyes were more and more magical. Master! Lin Yin knelt on the ground. Greetings to the city lord. Everyone knelt on the ground. After 1,500 years of cultivation, the cultivation of the people here had improved greatly. Rise! Lin Yu nodded in gratification. Because of Lin Li's existence, the entire imperial city was managed in an orderly manner. Lin Yu came to the small courtyard which Lin Li had specially built for him. Pushing open the door, he saw Lin Li truly plant flowers and plants. Elder Lin. The first thing Lin Yu did upon returning to the imperial city was to pay a visit to Lin Li. You're back. Lin Li nodded, putting down the work in his hands. Afterwards, Lin Yu explained everything he had learned in the Immortal Pass. This caused Lin Li to frown slightly. I had thought that the 10 Monster Kings had paid the price of being sealed to completely suppress the changes in the Realm Sea. I didn't expect that it would appear once more in the present world. However, that place has a huge connection to the birth of the first universe. Based on what I understand, the primordial overlords of the first universe most likely came from there. Lin Li explained everything he knew. This was the first time Lin Yu had heard of this as well. He had never heard Patriarch Lu or the others in the Immortal Pass speak of it. Perhaps even they didn't know about it. Chapter 1364. Lin Yu's heart was filled with astonishment. From the Grand Mist artifact of the utmost being of primordial chaos, he could vaguely understand that the utmost being of primordial chaos in the past was definitely extremely strong. His artifact had nearly sucked him dry. This was something that had never happened before when he used the God King's badge. From this, one could tell just how strong the utmost being of primordial chaos in the past was. He might not be weaker than his first ancestor, Lin Xian. This was something that Lin Li had verified as well. Back then, the utmost being of primordial chaos was named Hongjun. Back then, even the utmost being of primordial chaos had said that his strength wasn't weaker than his. Back then, he was the main force that killed his way into the ancestral grounds of the mysterious beings. He entered and exited 7 times. However, in the end, he was surrounded and killed. Lin Li said slowly. Lin Yu couldn't help but reveal a solemn look on his face. He had not expected that the utmost being of the first universe would have such a past. The utmost being of primordial chaos might not have died. Eventually, Lin Li revealed the truth. Back then, Hongjun had already transcended the boundaries of the Tao. He did not belong to the history books and could create everything in the universe. Why do you say that the utmost being of primordial chaos isn't dead? Lin Yu asked. Once they were tainted by the ancestral grounds of the mysterious beings, even the utmost beings would find it hard to escape and die. There's a possibility that the utmost being of primordial chaos had already fused into the Tao. He was everywhere. His path was different from Lin Jigao's. Linli said. However, this was just a guess of the future generations. As for whether it was true or not, Linli did not know. Lin Yu and Linli chatted for a long time. Only then did Lin Yu walk out of the courtyard. He told Linli about the items he had obtained from the mysterious mountain range of the Origin Grounds. Those stone eggs could be placed in the space-time palace. Through the acceleration of time, they would hatch quickly. This was the strong fighting strength of the Imperial City. Right now, Lin Yu's consciousness had already influenced the stone eggs and viewed him as their master. The moment Lin Yu took out the stone spirit puppet, Linli's face changed slightly. I didn't expect that you would be able to acquire a creature like this and bind it. Linli nodded as he spoke. What exactly is this? Lin Yu was puzzled. Although he knew that the rock spirit's origin was very mysterious, it was nurtured by the land of origin and had terrifying power. However, this was just Lin Yu's guess. These stone spirits only exist in the Genesis lands. There is a saying that stone spirits are the children of the heavens and the earth and belong to another power within the Genesis lands. However, from ancient times until now, no one has ever seen one. Linli said. Lin Yu frowned slightly. If the rock spirit was really another force in the land of origin, wouldn't that mean that he had provoked a supreme power? This was undoubtedly a huge problem. After all, a stone spirit that had yet to be born already possessed such strength. If the real rock spirit appeared, it would probably already be at the pinnacle. This was undoubtedly a huge threat. Don't worry. Back then, there was a stone spirit. Lin Jigao personally killed it, refined it into a divine medicine, and gave it to us old soldiers. Linli said. Back then, he fought alongside Lin Xian. What kind of opponent hadn't he encountered? Facing the stone spirit that hadn't been born yet, he didn't feel much worry. This is just a guess. However, this type of creature is indeed nurtured by the heavens and the earth, blessed by the heavenly Tao. As soon as it is born, it will possess terrifying strength. Linli said. He carefully examined the rock spirit and completely obliterated the true spirit within it, only to see a strange red lightning suddenly appear between heaven and earth. It seemed to have sensed the true death of the rock spirit, wishing to send down punishment, erase Linli and Lin Yu. Imperial Pass was shaking. Everyone looked up at the sky at the same time. Lin Yan's expression was grave, his eyes filled with endless mysteriousness. Right now, he also saw how terrifying the red lightning was. When Linli saw this scene, he only released a light snort. Back then, the rock spirit that was already at the highest level has already been killed by Lin Jigao. Now, what kind of waves can you still stir up? Linli scoffed. Right now, the space-time Great Hall released a supreme power, directly surging into the sky. It actually completely absorbed this strange lightning, turning it into a part of the space-time Great Hall's power. All of the phenomena were retracted. Lin Yu looked at the space-time Great Hall. Only now did he know just how terrifying the methods left behind by his ancestor were. That red lightning could definitely pose a threat to even the utmost beings. However, in front of the dilapidated space-time Great Hall, it didn't even cause the slightest bit of damage, directly being absorbed. Right now, all threats have been eliminated. Lin Yu calmly looked at the rock spirit that had now completely turned into his puppet, his expression incomparably calm. Even if the rock spirit truly belonged to another power, as long as he was strong enough, he could just subdue it. These stone eggs should be a type of rock spirit as well. However, they aren't pure enough. They can be used as a powerful fighting force for the Imperial City. Lin Yu took out the stone eggs. Profound runes were intertwined on them, and the Tao and principles were faintly visible on them. They emanated an endless amount of profound mysteries. Linli nodded. If these stone eggs were to successfully hatch, it would undoubtedly be a huge boost to the strength of the Imperial City. Lin Yu and Lin Li came to the space-time Great Hall and sped up the flow of space-time by 100 times. According to Lin Li's calculations, these stone eggs should completely hatch after 3,000 years. After everything was done, Lin Yu brought Lin Yin to the top of the city walls. He used the utmost restrictions that revered Ming had given him to reinforce the imperial city. This is a weapon that your master acquired in a secret area of the Genesis lands. It is of the quasi-paramount level. Take it. Lin Yu placed the palm-sized stone sword he had acquired into Lin Yin's hands. Right now, Lin Yu was in possession of a virtually paramount-level stone sword. This treasure, to him, wasn't of much use. Lin Yin accepted the treasure, then said happily, "Thank you, master." Right now, he was in the progenitor realm, and so he was lacking a life-linked origin treasure. As for this stone sword, it was of the quasi-paramount level. In addition, rock spirit treasures all had the unique characteristic of being able to evolve. To Lin Yin, the benefits were, without question, enormous. "Master, does this sword have a name?" Lin Yin looked at the stone sword in his hands, which was now 7 feet long. His expression returned to normal. "In the future, this will be your treasure. You can name it." Lin Yu said. He had great hopes for Lin Yin, which was why he had passed down this sword. "In the future, it will be called Evil Punishing Sword." Lin Yin looked at the sword with a calm expression. This was the hatred he had towards a strange race. He hoped that one day, he could wield this sword and wipe out the strange race. "In the future, you have to make good use of your talent," Lin Yu warned. He didn't have much worry towards Lin Yin. It was because Lin Yin's talent and temperament were undoubtedly top-notch. He had the human emperor's purest bloodline in his body, and now it was gradually being revealed. "I will follow master's teachings." Lin Yin bowed. Bao Jiaming came out of seclusion at this time, arriving on the city wall. So envious. He carried a teasing expression. "I pay my respects to Martial Uncle Bao." Lin Yin bowed. "Congratulations on Brother Bao's breakthrough." Lin Yu turned around, carrying a smile. "I was lucky. Bao Jiaming said with a smile. In more than 1,000 years, Bao Jiaming already merged with the Dao seed, now breaking into the Dao attraction realm. Right now, his body was exuding great power. Only now did he come out of seclusion. Right now, Imperial Pass was still developing, not relaxing for even a moment. After Lin Yu and Bao Jiaming caught up for a bit, they walked out of Emperor's City again. He was heading to a mysterious place, completing the highest level of the stars entrusted to him. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.